Countless zombies were approaching the only person left alive. The guy sat by a tall structure, waiting for the monsters to get close enough, holding a grenade at the ready. A few moments later, one of the zombies lunged at Michael. The hero finally waited for this moment and pulled the pin with a smile, rejoicing that this hell would finally end. A second later, there was an explosion that caught most of the monsters. Suddenly, a funnel appeared in the sky from which a white beam descended. The boy soared into the air faster than the fire could harm him, the descending beam enveloping his body. He watched everything that was happening with surprise, not understanding what was happening. Michael was transported back in time to the day the apocalypse began. Robbers broke into a 24-hour store and all the customers left in a hurry. The man pointed a knife at the saleswoman and demanded that she give him all the money. She obediently opened the cash register, not intending to risk her life. A moment later, the girl handed the money to the man, telling him to take it all and leave. He looked at Linda with a creepy smile, thinking how lucky he was to have run into such a beauty today. As the man began to slowly approach her, she retreated to the wall, beginning to slowly slide down it in fear. The girl took the first thing that came to hand for self-defense, saying that if he did not leave, she would call for help. But the robber only laughed, stretching out his hands towards Linda. When he tore off a piece of her shirt, she screamed for help. Suddenly, there was an explosion behind the man. When he turned around, he saw a strange guy with a gun. When Michael found himself in the past, the system said that the guy had 10 minutes before being transferred back. He decided to take essential items and water with food. He moved forward, intending to find out where the warehouse was, but was stopped by a man with a knife. The robber demanded that the guy stop pretending and take off his toy machine gun. But the next second, something sharp flashed past his cheek. The hero told him to shut up. The man fell to his knees in fear and began to beg for forgiveness. Michael was at his side in a second, knocking him out with one blow to the back of the head. Afterwards, he approached the girl, asking where their warehouse was. She pointed towards the door that was reserved for staff only. The hero thanked her and threw the hairpin in her direction as a token of gratitude. The girl deftly caught the gift, after which she tried to stop the guy. When he turned around, Linda thanked him for saving her and tossed him the key to the warehouse. Having received the key, the guy said that in the future she could find him and he would fulfill any of her requests. Linda didn't understand what he meant. A few moments later, the hero stood at the entrance to the warehouse. He needed to gather as many supplies as possible in 5 minutes. He was glad that the spatial ring had a large enough capacity. He emptied shelf after shelf. Everything was collected when he had 1 second left to spare, after which the space-time funnel sucked in the guy, moving him through time again. In the space from which Michael disappeared, some time had passed since the start of the apocalypse. 2 guys cornered the scared girl, wondering how much they could get from selling her. Linda, with tears in her eyes, begged them to let her go. A sudden noise caused the men to look away from her. Michael appeared behind them, pointing his gun at them, saying that it was beneath 2 men to attack 1 girl. Linda was happy that someone came to her aid. She asked the guy to take her away from that place. Michael didn't recognize her at first, but when she came closer, he realized that she was the same saleswoman. The hero said that he would fulfill her request, but first he needed to deal with one problem. 2 men who had been watching the guy all this time asked who he was that he dared to interfere in the affairs of the Axe Gang. If he wanted to die, then they would definitely fulfill the guy's wish. The guy activated his abilities, covering the daggers with his aura. He asked his opponents if they really thought it was that easy to kill him. The next moment, a mark on his hand lit up, and one of the bandits noticed it. Remembering where he had seen this symbol, he shouted to his partner that he was one of the awakened. They began to apologize and beg for mercy, but the hero had no intention of showing mercy to them. A second's attack was enough for him to get rid of both of them. Linda, who was watching this, was amazed by the guy's speed. It was hard for her to believe that an ordinary person could move like that. Looking at her, Michael asked if she had managed to forget him. Seeing the confusion on her face, he decided to give her a hint by saying the words, "Before the end of the world, store, robber, hairpin." A few seconds later, her eyes widened in surprise. She recognized him and asked why he hadn't changed at all since that day. The hero changed the subject, saying that she shouldn't worry as long as she was with him. He would fulfill her request and take her away from here. Suddenly, she asked Michael to save her boyfriend from the Axe Gang, saying that they had been hunting the couple for a long time. Michael turned around and said that he had promised her only one favor, after which he added that he was 100% sure that her boyfriend sold her. Suddenly, the hero heard voices from around the corner. Robbers from the Axe Gang came out to them. The girl immediately noticed her boyfriend among them. She ran towards them, trying to find out if he was okay. The guy approached the leader, saying that she was his girlfriend and could be sold profitably. Linda was shocked by her lover's words. She hoped that he was joking with her in this way. But the leader told her that her boyfriend was absolutely serious. He sold her to them for a sack of bread. She said with tears in her eyes that this couldn't be true. He couldn't betray her. They loved each other. Noah said that he was only pretending so that he could sell her profitably in the future, but he never loved her. The girl was hurt by the words she heard. She blamed herself for being blinded by love for several years and not noticing many obvious things. The gang leader began to approach her, saying that he could comfort her. Suddenly, Michael blocked his way, saying that he was not interested in all the details of their relationship, but he promised this girl to take her far away from this place and ensure her safety. One of the bandits' subordinates took out an axe and began to threaten the hero. But the next second, this daredevil fell to the ground with his neck pierced by a dagger. After this, the hero said that if they did not leave, he would kill them all. The bandits were talking among themselves about how this guy was awakened, and they didn't have a single chance against him. Suddenly, the leader showed his abilities, saying that the guy was not the only one awakened here. He told the hero to give him the girl, then he would let him go without causing much harm. Crying, Linda told her savior to leave her there. She didn't want him to get hurt because of her. Michael turned around and replied that he always kept his promises. After that, he took out his blade, preparing to attack his enemy. The leader, seeing a confident guy in front of him, said that he was underestimating his abilities. Without listening to the end of the man's empty chatter, Michael attacked his opponent. The man didn't expect that he could be defeated with just one blow. The girl felt joy mixed with surprise, watching how easily Michael dealt with his opponent. After this, the hero looked bloodthirstily at the rest of the gang members, saying that now it was their turn. They began to back away, begging Michael for mercy. But to their regret, the guy was deaf to their pleas. Sliding lightning fast between his victims, he took their lives with one action. Only Noah remained alive. He began to apologize for his mistake, asking not to kill him. Michael looked at Linda, saying that he would do as she decided. The girl said that he saved her once, so he should be spared, but she never wants to see her ex-lover again. Noah was grateful to her, saying that he would not come near her again, and then ran to the other end of the alley. The hero who was watching this thought that he had seen a lot of things during the apocalypse. This man could cause a lot of trouble in the future, so he decided to leave a mark on it. The shot sent with the mark reached its target. The man felt a sudden pain in the back area. When Linda asked what he had done, the hero replied that he had not killed him, but had merely fired several beams of air energy into his body. The next moment, a yellow firefly appeared in front of him. The guy did not understand what it was. The moment the guy grabbed it, the system congratulated him on his second level of awakening. He was glad that his powers had increased. He understood that there were still many mysteries in this world, and he needed to assemble a team and return to the research institute from which his time travel began. Linda noticed that something was happening to the guy and asked if everything was okay with him. He replied that everything was fine, and since she was now safe, she could go. He had a couple of things left to do. When the guy moved forward, she stopped him, asking him to take her with him, arguing that she could help him. The hero asked how she was going to help him. The girl replied that she did not have superpowers, but she could offer another way, after which she began to pull off her dress. The hero was surprised by her actions and fell out of reality for a few seconds. After pulling himself together, he walked up to her and told her to follow him. Sometime later, they came out onto a crowded street. Linda asked what kind of place it was because she had never been to this part of the city. The hero replied that this area is a paradise for the rich and a hell for the poor, and that you can buy anything here. When the girl asked where they were going, he pointed to a tall building in front of them with a sign that said auction. The auction house was full of people being served by girls in rabbit costumes. Once inside, the girl asked what they were doing there. She felt uncomfortable being there. The The guy calmed her down, saying that only here they could fully replenish their supplies. The hero approached the standing staff, asking to be taken to the auction room. The girls looked haughtily at the approaching guy, coming to the conclusion that this was another poor man intending to sell his girlfriend. One of them said that they would not be able to take him where he wanted to go. After this, the guy took out 3 chocolates, after which he repeated his request. The waitresses began throwing themselves at Michael, listing all their virtues. To their surprise, he pointed to a girl standing quietly behind them. The hero approached her and said that she could do him a favor for a reward in the form of chocolate. He asked to take his companion to the shower and give her new clothes. She agreed without hesitation, thanking the guy for choosing her. Linda said it would cost her too much and she didn't need it. But Michael interrupted the girl, saying that his people should wear and use only the best. His words resonated pleasantly in the girl's heart. She was flattered that he considered her his own man, and she agreed. Sometime later, the couple were in the auction room. The presenter introduced the first slot, a pair of mutated zombies that can compare with the awakened first level. The starting price was announced at 1,000 cartridges. Linda was surprised that they sold something like this here. Michael explained that the crystals in the brains of mutated zombies can awaken the powers of an ordinary person or enhance them. Meanwhile, the presenter moved on to announcing the next lot. A truck appeared on the scene that could withstand attacks from third-level awakened beings and could also hold about 20 people with a power output of 800 horsepower. The hero realized that this was exactly what he needed to survive outside the city. A fierce battle for this lot began in the hall. Suddenly, one person appeared who made everyone pay attention to him. The man said that this truck would be his. He was offering 2 million rounds of ammunition. There was no one in the hall willing to compete with such an influential figure as the boss of the Berserker group. Nicholas walked up to the stage, telling the girl there to announce the results of the auction, who promptly announced him as the winner of the slot. But she is suddenly interrupted, saying that the bidding is not over. The man turned around to see this madman. Michael said he was offering 3 million rounds of ammunition. Nicholas asked the boy who he was, that he dared to stand in his way. The hero replied that the man's group could not afford such a high price. It would hit their supplies hard. In response to his statement, Nicholas said that he would bet 3,100,000 rounds. Michael raised the bet to 4 million. The man tried not to give in to the boy until the very end, but when he announced 6 million, his confidants began to try to stop Nicholas, realizing that this was an unaffordable amount for them. This made him even more angry. He couldn't just lose to this guy. The next moment, Nicholas walked towards the old man sitting at a distance, who is the creator of the truck. He said that the Berserkers would carry out any order if he sold the truck to him. The master thought this offer was good. He had heard about the strength of this group, so he agreed to the deal. After this, Nicholas, pleased with himself, turned to Michael, saying that he had won. The hero decided to use the same strategy as his opponent. He approached the old man, saying that he had something that might interest him, after which he showed him the box, upon looking at which the master was very surprised. The guy said it was a limited edition idol figurine that had been discontinued 30 years ago. Nicholas laughed at him, saying that something like that would not interest the master. The man did not pay attention to the distracting conversations in the hall. He could not believe that what he had dreamed of since his youth could finally be in his hands. He asked if the hero had any more figures. Michael smiled and placed a few more boxes on the floor. The old man looked at all this happily, saying that he would exchange the truck for these figurines. After his words, Nicholas recovered from the shock, saying that he could pay more. The master apologized, explaining that nothing could compare in value to the beautiful idols of the past. Everyone in the room was amazed that he traded an armored truck for ordinary dolls. Meanwhile, the old man approached the hero, smiling and saying that he had a promising future. Nicholas told his men to set up an ambush at the exit of the auction house. He can't just let this guy go. Sometime later, a new lot was announced. A girl who had sensory ability came onto the stage. Nicholas was immediately eager to purchase this lot. The hero thought that this ability would be very useful for survival. The presenter said that this girl is awakened. She can sense zombies within a few kilometers. Suddenly, Alice took the microphone, saying that she was selling herself voluntarily, but she had a condition. Everyone was excited by this statement. Everyone was confident that they would be able to fulfill all of her conditions. The next moment, she announced that this condition was the destruction of the Berserker group. Nicholas remembered her. The girl was part of a group of hawks that managed to escape from them. After his words, one of those present recalled that relatively recently the Berserkers had ambushed the hawks and destroyed almost everyone, with the exception of a runaway girl. The presenter realized that at this rate she would not get anything, and it was time for her to take control of the situation. She announced the starting price of 10 million rounds. Michael allowed his companion to participate in the bidding, asking her to announce their bid. Nicholas was furious that this guy was getting into trouble again, and he pulled out a gun and said that he wouldn't get out of here alive today. The hero, smiling, asked if the man was planning to desecrate the auction house with murder. After his words, Nicholas announced to everyone that he had a personal war with this impudent fellow. If someone wanted to part with life, then let them try to interfere. At his words, everyone started running towards the exit. The next moment, Nicholas shot at the hero. The guy easily dodged the bullet. The next second, he was behind the man, saying that his bullets were very slow. When the hero put a machine gun to the enemy's head, Nicholas stood motionless. Having analyzed what had happened, he asked the guy if he was awakened. Michael replied that it didn't matter whether he was awakened or not, he just wanted to get out of here alive. Nicholas's remaining subordinates pulled out their guns, telling the guy to let their boss go. The next moment, the man told Michael to dare to shoot him. Then his chances of getting out of here would be significantly reduced. The hero could not ignore such a polite request from his rival. He pulled the trigger, putting a bullet in the man's head. The gang members who witnessed the death of their leader decided to take revenge on Michael and began shooting. The guy deftly dodged all the bullets, gradually approaching his opponents. Once he got close enough, he took them all out one by one. Michael didn't kill them. He watched as they left the room in a hurry until the guy changed his mind. A few moments later, he turned to Alice, offering to come with him. The girl replied that the guy should have caught the berserkers first, not provoked them. The hero pointed to the dead Nicholas, saying that the girl had nothing to fear. There was nothing scary in this gang. After his words, Linda approached her, saying that she would be safe if she went with them, and became Michael's subordinate. She looked at the guy again, coming to the thought that he could help her get revenge. Sometime later, they were running down the street trying to catch up with the escaped members of the group. Alice used her ability to scan everything around her in a surrounding area of several kilometers. A few moments later, she managed to spot 3 guys. After she gave this information to Michael, he told the girl to watch his back while he took care of them. Immediately after that, he increased his speed, heading towards the indicated place. At the moment when the girls ran to the right alley, they saw Michael slowly coming out of there. Approaching his companions, he told Alice that without her ability, dealing with these guys would be quite difficult. Suddenly, the girl asked what his plan was. By killing Nicholas, he angered his brother, who had probably already managed to put a reward on their heads. Now it would be more difficult for them to move in the open. The hero just smiled, saying that if someone wanted to kill him, they should be prepared to pay the appropriate price for that decision. Linda got the guy's attention by addressing him by name. When he asked what was wrong, she said that her ex had recently asked her to meet him, and he wanted to apologize again. But the girl did not want to go to this meeting. Michael said that this was a great opportunity, she should go. The hero simply could not pass up the chance to get rid of such an annoying person. After explaining the plan to his companions for a while, he said that he would give Alice some useful things, and later she would go and hide them in the place he had designated. Meanwhile, at the Berserker headquarters, the second leader was bursting with rage. He couldn't understand how people from such a strong group couldn't lay a finger on just 3 people. Suddenly, one of the subordinates came forward with an unknown guy, saying that he brought someone who knew a great way to lure out their target. Jack looked at the standing boy. He looked too unreliable, and his body was terribly weak. The man doubted that he could be of any use. The next moment, Noah reported that the guy who killed Jack's brother had now teamed up with his ex. He had managed to arrange a meeting with her. Michael would definitely be somewhere nearby at that moment. The leader said that he would believe him, but if his plan failed, he should be prepared to say goodbye to his life. But if he succeeded, he promised the guy 5 packs of instant noodles. Upon hearing about the promised reward, Noah said that he would not let me down and could be counted on. The next morning, Linda and Michael met with her ex. She asked why he asked her for a meeting. The guy started apologizing, saying that he realized all his past mistakes and asked her for a chance to start over. Linda walked away from him a few steps, saying that she had said everything clearly the last time. After her words, Noah laughed, saying that if it was because of this guy behind her back, then she could no longer be afraid he would die today. Immediately after his words, a gang of berserkers came out to them. Noah shouted to the leader that their plan had been a success. Linda realized that she was being used again for their dirty purposes. Noah admitted that it was quite easy to pull off, knowing the girl's gentle and easygoing nature. She began to apologize to Michael, saying that because of her they had fallen into a trap, but the guy calmed her down, saying that this was exactly what he had been counting on when he had given his approval for this meeting. He said it was a great opportunity. If it weren't for her, they wouldn't have been able to get them all together. Jack mocked the hero. It seemed to him that the guy was too arrogant, saying that he would get rid of them all alone. But the guy said that he did not come here empty-handed, after which he gave the command to Alice. The next second, an explosion was heard in the place where his opponents were standing. Jack realized they were in ambush and ordered his men to leave immediately. Michael wondered where the man was going to go if explosions were happening everywhere. Immediately after his words, several more explosions were heard. Noah stood to the side and watched what was happening in disbelief. Michael turned his attention to the backing away guy, saying that his story had come to an end. Noah sank to the ground, begging the hero not to kill him. Seeing that there was no reaction to his pleas on the hero's face, he turned to Linda, hoping that she could stand up for him. He crawled on his knees to the girl, asking her to help him in memory of their relationship. Watching Linda's reaction, Noah was completely confident that she would agree. A few seconds later, the girl plunged a knife into her ex-boyfriend's stomach, wishing him to burn in hell. Linda said that he was right, and before she was too soft and allowed herself to be used, thanks to him she managed to change. After that, Michael said that it was time for them to leave here. Jack, emerging from the fire, asked where they were going to go, with one unfinished business. The hero was surprised when he realized that the man standing in front of him was a third-level awakened one. The next moment, he rushed at Michael. The man was a few steps away from his goal when he was hit by a truck that suddenly appeared. After Alice stopped near her friends, the guy said that she was more than just in time. After everyone got into the car, Michael said that the noise they had made today would attract a lot of dangerous people. They had better get as far away from here as possible. When they drove out onto the next street, they had already been watched for some time. One of the groups that had taken on the task of capturing these three had already prepared their plan. Alice noticed the surveillance and began to race along the crowded street in an attempt to break away from the tail. But Jack was actively catching up with them in his car, not sparing anyone who got in his way. Right behind him rushed the leaders of the two best gangs in the city. Alice informed Michael that there were trucks at the nearest intersection that would block their path. The hero commanded the girl to speed up and drive towards the main gates of the city. They rushed at full speed, not paying attention to the people they encountered on the way. Approaching the gate, the girl said that they would not be able to break through it. It was made of thin steel plates. But the guy convinced her otherwise, telling her to trust him. During the auction, he overheard that the berserker group was involved in the production of this gate, and the steel plate they were given was replaced with some wooden panels. Alice decided to listen to the guy's words and warn them to be ready for a blow. The residents, who realized what exactly these madmen were going to do, ran as far away from this place as possible, saving their lives. As Jack approached, he began to worry that they might know the secret of this gate. He tried to calm himself with the fact that those who knew her besides him had long since died. The hero waited calmly, and Linda, sitting next to him, was already preparing for death. But she was glad that if they did die, Michael would be next to her. A few moments later, he commanded the girl behind the wheel to start firing the cannons the truck was equipped with. The next second, several shells flew towards the gate. When they reached their destination, there was a loud explosion, causing cracks to appear on the massive doors. The truck broke through the flames, and the next second found itself outside the city. Alice could hardly believe that their plan had worked and they had survived. The gang members tried to comprehend what had happened before their eyes. Suddenly, a multitude of zombies began to burst into the city through the hole that had formed. The leaders returned to their trucks, their goal now being to destroy the danger looming over them. Jack rushed forward, crushing most of the zombies. Meanwhile, Michael's team also destroyed the monsters that came their way. Linda was worried that there were many ordinary people in the city who would not be able to stand up for themselves, but the hero reassured her, saying that high-level zombies outside the city were regularly destroyed, and ordinary ones would not be able to cause any harm. The guy said that they should be grateful to them. He revealed to them the impending danger. Sooner or later, the zombies would be able to break through inside. When he took out the bloody clothes, the girl asked what he was going to do with it. He tore the cloth into shreds, saying that he had one crazy plan. Immediately after this, he threw the pieces of cloth outside, and the smell of blood immediately brought the zombies running to the truck. The next second, Linda turned sharply and crushed them all. Jack's team, pursuing them, spotted their target from afar. The chief was informed that Michael's truck had stopped moving. It looked like they were out of fuel. Jack was pleased with this news. Meanwhile, Michael sat in his truck and waited for his pursuers to approach. When the arrivals began to get out of the trucks, the hero said that he had already been waiting for them for a long time. The group members were glad that their target had come into their hands. Jack said they were surrounded and the guy had nowhere to run. Michael stood up from his seat, saying that he thought completely differently. The leader laughed at his words. He thought that the boy had gone crazy, making such statements. Afterwards, he told the hero that this time he would not fall for his trick. He brought with him special awakened ones. Bombs are not scary to them. Michael praised the man for having the foresight to check the area for traps. He pointed away from them, saying that there was one thing he had not yet foreseen. The members of the group began to turn around, hearing strange sounds behind them. A crowd of zombies was approaching them from all sides. They realized that they had fallen into another trap, but this time their chances of survival were much lower. The men began shooting at the monsters, trying to stop their invasion. Jack asked if the guy had lured them here on purpose, having previously spread the smell of blood around the area. The guy confirmed his thoughts, saying that during the explosion he picked up several things from the man's dead comrades. The leader called him crazy, after which he turned around and ordered his subordinates to get out of there. The next moment, the hero attacked his turned-away enemy. The man managed to block the attack with his weapon at the last second. After that, they leaned back in different directions. The leader asked the guy what he was thinking. If there were even more undead, then they wouldn't leave here alive. Michael replied that he didn't care. He promised Alice to destroy the berserkers, so he will fulfill his promise at any cost. The girl sitting in the car burst into tears when she heard the hero's words. Linda, who was nearby, said that they were very lucky to have met a man like him. Meanwhile, Jack ordered his guys to clear the way while he finished off Michael. His deputy immediately got into the car, following the order. Several cars moved forward, shooting all the zombies. John said his guys with the firepower of the trucks would be enough to break through. The guy made a big mistake by missing his chance to escape. Michael agreed with him, saying that he does have a lot of people at the moment. After that, he gave a command to Alice. She immediately pressed the activation button on the truck. A couple of seconds later, the shells were flying towards Jack's team. Seeing this, the man ordered everyone to hide behind the trucks. Michael was once again one step ahead of him. The hero said that these were not all the surprises he had prepared. The next moment, something exploded in the air and a strange liquid poured onto the group. They couldn't figure out what it was. It just had a disgusting smell. Suddenly, Jack realized that it was sewage waste. Michael confirmed his guess, saying that there were some substances there, the smell of which strongly stimulated the ferocity of the undead. The guy enjoyed being in complete control of the situation. He informed them that, being in dangerous proximity to 100 zombies under the influence of this smell, they would die. Confirming the hero's words, the zombies became more aggressive, and the men could not concentrate because of the stench surrounding them. Moments later, the group members were defeated by the undead. Jack could only watch in horror as his comrades died. Alice, who came up from behind, said that now he understood what it was like to lose all your loved ones and not be able to help in any way. The man was filled with rage and was about to attack the girl. He swore to kill her even at the cost of his own life. Michael arrived in time and pushed his girlfriend back, telling Jack that he was his opponent, not her. The hero held back the enemy's furious attack, using his aura to deflect the dagger. The guy said that as long as he was here, the man might not even try to touch any of his people. After his words, Jack transferred his attack to the ground, saying that in that case he would get rid of the boy first. Michael was able to assess his abilities and decided that he needed to be more careful in this fight. The girls ran up to the hero and asked him if he was okay and if they should prepare to retreat. Their words angered the leader. He asked where they intended to retreat. He couldn't let the man who had destroyed all his comrades go unpunished. The man used one of his strongest attacks, launching a powerful wave of fire. Michael and the girls barely managed to avoid a direct hit on them. The next moment, he jumped onto their car. Jack was not happy that his opponent remained unharmed. He asked if he could also avoid his subsequent attacks. The hero replied that he was not going to run away all the time. He promised to get rid of all the members of the group. The girls began to dissuade the guy from such a rash action. It was obvious that he would not be able to stand up to Jack. The hero turned to them with a smile, saying that he would be fine and that he would be able to win. Immediately after this, he jumped from the truck towards his opponent. The man was glad that his opponent had voluntarily stepped into the arms of death. He was ready to attack at any moment. When the hero got close enough, Jack repeated his previous attack. To his surprise, the flame passed through the guy, and he himself began to fade. The man realized that it was an illusion technique, but it was too late. The next second, Michael stood behind his opponent. He plunged the weapon into the leader's body, but a thin layer of protection covered the leader's entire body, preventing the blade from going any further. The hero didn't expect the enemy to have a strengthening ability. John wanted to counterattack, but the guy managed to move away to a safe distance. After that, he asked if his plasma shell was a third-level ability. The man confirmed his assumption, saying that while he was in the avatar state, his body was covered in a layer of high-temperature flame. Even bullets would not harm him. Having built up enough strength, Michael said he enjoyed the challenge of difficult things. The next moment, he created several clones of himself who rushed towards Jack. The man, in turn, strengthened the protective shell, saying that he would destroy all the pathetic copies of the enemy until he used up all his energy reserves. At that moment, the clones simultaneously threw their daggers at him. John stood there, watching with satisfaction as the weapon bounced off his body, and said that such techniques were useless against him. Linda was very worried. Michael had not managed to land a single blow during all this time. She did not know how they could help the guy. Alice, who was standing nearby, said that he should find a weak spot and only then attack, in which case he would have a chance to break through the man's defense. The hero had a hard time with this technique, breathing heavily. He said that he underestimated Jack. He has an amazing ability. The leader laughed, saying that until his flame went out, the boy was powerless against it. After his words, Michael noticed that the enemy's flame began to fade. The leader thought that the guy was trying to joke in such a way, it was impossible for his flame to go out. Suddenly, Jack felt that something was wrong. Looking at his body, he saw that his protective layer was gone. Looking at the enemy's uncomprehending face, the guy explained that in order to maintain his flame, a man needs oxygen, and by a lucky coincidence, the guy's ability is related to air. All this time, he was removing oxygen from certain areas, deactivating Jack's skill. The leader found it hard to believe that some kid could fool him without putting in much effort. A moment later, Michael slit his opponent's throat, ending the protracted fight. Linda was glad that the hero won without receiving serious injuries, and Alice sank to the floor. Tears of joy filled her eyes. Revenge for her comrades had been accomplished. Now she could live without this burden. Suddenly, a golden light reached out from the leader's dead body towards Michael. The boy was surprised when a warm glow enveloped him. He remembered that this had happened once before. The next moment, the system congratulated him on successfully killing a third-level awakened creature and awarded him 100 evolution points. The hero was glad that his efforts were worthily rewarded. The zombies that were nearby reminded us of themselves. The undead began to flock to the guy. Michael destroyed the zombies that were dangerously close to him. After this, he ordered the girls to retreat in accordance with the previously planned route. After his words, Alice immediately began to climb back down into the truck, taking the driver's seat. A moment later, the car moved towards the guy. The girl told the hero to immediately climb onto the truck. The guy didn't think long and deftly jumped onto the car. Once safe, he told Alice to detonate the explosives he had prepared earlier. The girl took out the remote control and pressed the desired button without thinking. The next second, multiple explosions were heard behind them. He used the power of air to push back the remaining undead that blocked their path. One person was watching the events taking place below from the cliff. The girl was interested in the guy who killed the leader of the berserkers. She was looking forward to their battle. A few seconds later, Mina dropped to her knees, aiming her deadly weapon at the truck. The girl sincerely hoped that the guy would appreciate her gift. Michael noticed something rapidly approaching them from the air. Alice also noticed this and asked the guy what they should do. The hero told the girls not to worry, he would deal with it. Then he jumped towards the projectile. Linda, who was watching this crazy act, could not hold back her tears. She was very afraid for Michael. The hero thought that he had to finish off all the annoying individuals in order to ensure their safety. The next second, he threw his dagger at the projectile. This action was followed by a powerful explosion. Linda didn't know if Michael was still alive. The rising dust clouds obscured her view. Alice tried to understand the situation and figure out who could be shooting at them. Mina, who was watching, was disappointed that the boy she had placed her hopes on died so quickly. Suddenly, a dagger flew out of the cloud of dust. The girl didn't even have time to blink when something sharp ran across her cheek. She looked with surprise and confusion at the dagger that was stuck into the stone behind her back. The next moment, Michael appeared in front of Mina and said that it was too early for her to play with such dangerous toys. The girl was surprised that he was able to survive any attack. Smiling, she said she enjoyed playing against strong people. After that, she took out 2 pistols, pointing them at the enemy. The hero only watched her with a smile, saying that a weapon of such a level was completely useless against him. Activating his technique, he said that the girl must surrender. Mina was angered by his words. She is not one to give up without a fight. A moment later, she began firing her gun at the boy, intending to kill him. But all the bullets flew to the ground, colliding with the hero's air shield. Noticing that Mina was confused, he removed his shield and rushed towards her. As he approached, he told the girl that it was time to stop before it was too late. She jumped to the side, taking out her special grenade, which would definitely be the last thing the guy saw before he died. To Mina's surprise, Michael moved behind her in a flash. When she felt the guy's hands on her, she dropped the grenade in fear. The hero took advantage of this and deftly grabbed such a dangerous thing. The next moment, he said that once her bomb was in his hands, Mina had no chance of winning. The girl smiled at his words, showing the pin she had pulled out in her hand and saying that the guy needed to be more careful. He realized that such a dangerous thing in his hand would explode in the next few moments. The next second, he turned around and threw it as far as he could. Michael noted that this girl was very fast. He couldn't even notice when she pulled this trick. He assumed that Mina was also awakened. A couple of seconds later, there was a loud explosion. Despite the distance, the power of this bomb was enough to hit Michael and Mina. The girl sat on the ground, recovering from what had happened. Suddenly, the girl saw a blade pointed at her. When she raised her head, she saw a smiling guy saying that it was useless to teach her wisdom. It would be easier to kill her. She informed him that once her heart stopped, the bomb implanted in her body would explode, turning everything within a 30-kilometer radius into a huge crater. After her words, the hero remembered that he had heard about one bounty hunter. She had an amazing ability to greatly enhance firearms. It is not difficult to guess that this is the same girl in front of him now. Michael thought it would be great if she joined his team. Mina noticed the doubt on her opponent's face and said that if he was afraid of dying, then he had better let her go. Unexpectedly for the girl, the guy asked if she wanted to join him. He had a lot of babes who might interest her. He's heard that she's just a gun maniac, so convincing her to join him shouldn't be a problem. Upon hearing the hero's proposal, Mina misinterpreted what he meant, recalling her past experience when she fell into the hands of perverts. Crawling away from the guy, she indignantly asked how he could offer something like that to an underage girl. She would never join him. Michael was genuinely surprised by her reaction. He assumed that there was some misunderstanding between them. Mina replied indignantly that there was nothing here that she could misunderstand. She said that if it weren't for the guy's abilities, she would have immediately destroyed him, as well as other guys like him. Suddenly, the couple's attention was drawn to screams coming from somewhere to the side. Linda ran up to the guy, worriedly asking if he was okay. A couple of seconds later, Alice joined her, asking a similar question. Mina, who was watching this scene, was amazed by the perfect figures of these girls. Michael watched with pleasure as the changes appeared on the gun lover's face. After waiting a while, he asked her if she still thought that, with such stunning partners, he might be interested in a child. Mina was angered by his words. She said with irritation that he should look more closely. She was no longer a child. After the girl had spoken, Alice asked where such a cute child came from. Linda, in turn, handed Mina a candy, saying that such a little girl must have been very scared. Looking at these two girls, she was forced to admit that she could never compare to them. The hero extended his hand to her, asking if she had changed her mind about his offer. He could offer her very powerful guns. He was confident that he would be able to get almost any weapon for her, because the system store had a full variety of them, and with enough points, there would be no problems with this. Mina stood up on her own, saying that she didn't believe that the guy could have a decent weapon. He asked her to wait a couple of minutes, meeting her distrustful gaze. The hero told the system that he wanted to buy a weapon. The next moment, the system opened the catalog, reporting that the guy now had 100 points. After which, she suggested one of the most suitable weapons for him. A rocket launcher called Dragon. It has a fairly high class and was developed as the best weapon for a single soldier. Michael decided that this rocket launcher was just what he needed, so he reached for the buy button. Suddenly, Alice felt something was wrong and turned towards their truck. All the zombies began to move away from their car. Suddenly, loud sounds were heard a few meters away from them, after which dust again rose into the air, blocking their view. A couple of seconds later, the girls saw through it the outline of a huge figure that was rapidly approaching. The next moment, a huge monster came out to them, emitting a terrifying roar. Linda realized that it was a mutated zombie, which was apparently attracted by the accumulation of small undead here. Alice said that she had heard about him before. This monster is one of the 3 strongest among mutants. Against them, ordinary weapons are useless. Turning to Michael, she asked what they should do. Mina's eyes lit up with excitement at the sight of this zombie. She ran forward, saying that this was an extremely rare species of undead, and she was very lucky to have come across it today. After which, she set her sights on him, imagining how much she could earn by selling the crystals obtained from his brain. Suddenly, the hero stopped the girl, blocking her goal. Mina didn't understand why he was stopping her. The next moment, she noticed something in the guy's hands that caught her attention. The girl asked what kind of gun he was holding. Raising the weapon, he said that this was his big baby, after which he asked Mina what she thought of it, noting that it was much larger than the one in the girl's hands. Mina responded with a bit of irritation that she might be bigger, but that didn't prove that she was better in terms of combat power. Michael patted his gun proudly, saying that it wasn't as weak as it looked. He decided to prove his words by aiming her at the mutant. The monster realized that he was in danger. A second later, he decided to attack those below. The mutant quickly approached the guy, reducing the distance between them. Linda began to worry that the monster was getting too close to them. The hero said that they shouldn't worry, he was confident in what he was going to do. After that, he pressed the button that activated his baby. The guy told everyone to get ready and take a couple of steps back. A few seconds later, he released the button and aimed the gun at the mutant. The projectile he fired completely engulfed the monster. Mina was surprised at how powerful the guy's weapon was. A minute later, a large crater formed a few meters away from them, leaving no hint of the monster's presence here some time ago. Pleased with himself, the hero turned to Mina, reporting that the threat had been eliminated. The girl looked at the guy in front of her with admiring eyes. Michael asked if she wanted the gun for herself, and if so, she would first need to join his team. The girl quickly approached him, saying that she accepted the challenge. Wrapping her arms and legs around him, she said that until he gave her this baby, Mina was free to do whatever she wanted. She tried to take the gun away from the guy, but he said that the girl should get off him first. Mina objected, saying that if the hero did not give her the weapon, she would never get off him. Alice, who was watching this scene, said that they had not yet gotten rid of all the undead surrounding them. They did not have time for fooling around. Linda, who was standing nearby, said with a smile that they could be forgiven for this pampering, watching them. The girl had the feeling that she had returned to the world before the apocalypse. They decided to set up camp at this place, and a few hours later everyone was sitting around the fire. Michael stood up, saying it was time to assign responsibilities. Heading towards the truck, he said that they were on a hill, so the usual undead would not be able to get here. Everyone would take turns on duty. The hero volunteered to be the first to carry out the duty. Mina asked when she could get the promised gun. The guy replied that until he completely trusted her, he would not give her up. After his words, the girl stood up irritably, saying that she was going to bed. Following her, Linda and Alice also headed to their tents. All this time, both girls were thinking about the same thing, namely, that as soon as everyone fell asleep, each of them intended to go to Michael. Meanwhile, the hero was thinking that in just a few days he had managed to assemble a team of 4 people, and it was time to go to the research institute. Suddenly, the door to the truck opened. A moment later, a smiling Alice appeared in this place, which greatly surprised the guy. He asked why she was here. Everyone was supposed to go to bed. After climbing inside, the girl replied that she wanted to thank him for destroying the Berserker group. The hero replied that there was no need for gratitude. Comrades should help each other. She had better go to bed. Tomorrow, they had an equally difficult day ahead of them. Ignoring the guy's words, she began to take off her jacket, languidly saying that she promised to give herself to the one who would help her take revenge. Embarrassed, Michael stepped back, trying to reason with the girl. He said that others could hear what was happening here. Alice pressed herself against the flushed guy, saying that before leaving she made sure that everyone was fast asleep and that they had nothing to worry about. After which she pulled away from him a little, shyly asking him to try to be gentle with her during her first experience. His thoughts were in complete disarray at that moment. The remnants of his mind were telling him to pull himself together and save them both from making wrong decisions. But another part of my mind said that now was the apocalypse, and such things were normal. His thoughts were interrupted by Linda knocking on the glass. The couple was caught off guard by the girl's appearance, and they urgently needed to come up with something. Without waiting for an answer, Linda reached for the door handle, intending to open it. Alice was overcome with panic and asked the guy what she should do. The only thing he could think of was to hide her behind his seat. The moment Linda opened the door, she saw a sweaty Michael sitting in a strange position. She asked what happened to him. The hero tried to hide his panic behind a smile, saying that it was very stuffy in the car in the evenings. Alice, who was sitting in the back, tried not to even breathe so as not to give herself away. She was interested in why Linda had come to Michael at such an hour. The sudden guess that the girl had come with the same purpose as she had made her feel excited. The guy said it was very stuffy in there and suggested they move outside and talk there. He was desperately trying to come up with a plan to give Alice the opportunity to slip out of the truck unnoticed. To his surprise, Linda replied that there was no need for that, as if they talked outside they might wake the others. After her words, the guy began to feel excited again. He noticed that Alice had been acting like this for a few moments, but now she was hiding right behind his seat. He couldn't let anything happen in this situation. After clearing his throat, the hero said that now was not the best time or place for this kind of thing. Linda didn't understand what he meant. The next moment, she looked at her clothes and realized that the situation could seem quite ambiguous. The girl said with embarrassment that she came to him so that he could help her become awakened. She wants to become stronger because at the moment she is the weakest of their team. Hearing her words, Michael breathed a sigh of relief. Alice couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief either. She was glad that the girl wasn't interested in the guy in any other way. The next moment, to their mutual surprise, Linda approached the hero, saying that if he wanted, she didn't mind. Michael moved away from the girl as far as the space of the truck would allow, saying that today was not the best day. Crawling towards him, she said that she thought differently. This was a wonderful opportunity when no one could stop them. The knock on the glass that was heard once again frightened Linda greatly. Mina tried to reach Michael, hoping that he would open the door for her. The guy himself was at a loss as to what she could possibly need. Linda was worried about what would happen if she was seen here like this. She began to look around in panic, looking for a place where she could hide. She suddenly froze, announcing that she had found a suitable place, her words making the hearts of the 2 people in the car sink into their heels. After asking to be covered, she began to climb into the back seats, hoping to hide underneath them. Michael didn't have time to stop her, and the girl finally disappeared behind him. Covering his face with his hand, he began to prepare himself for what might happen here, his heart skipping a beat until that very moment. A couple of seconds later, Mina opened the door, asking what the guy had been doing all this time. The girl hoped to use some seduction techniques to get the coveted gun. He looked at her with resignation, saying that now it was all over. There was no point in hiding anything. Mina looked at him blankly, asking what he meant. After that, excited voices were heard from behind. Linda was scared that someone else was hiding here besides her, and Alice was forced to reveal herself so as not to create panic in her friend. Mina was stunned that both girls had been with Michael the whole time. A moment later, she called the guy a pervert. They didn't even try to hide what they were doing. The flushed hero slapped her on the back of the head, saying that she had misunderstood the situation. The girl just looked at him with distrust. The next morning, they set off on their journey. Michael rode on top of the truck while the girls were inside. He didn't feel any discomfort from yesterday's situation, but he couldn't say the same about his companions. Linda was still going over in her head what had happened yesterday. She hadn't expected to meet Alice there. Mina broke the awkward silence by saying that she hadn't expected Michael to have the strength to take on two people at once. Alice, flushed, said that the girl had misunderstood everything. Linda confirmed her words, saying that nothing ever happened between them. Mina said that there was no need to be ashamed of this situation. In their current world, Michael could create his own harem group at any time. After her words, the truck braked sharply. The girl was unable to stay in her seat due to such a sharp braking, and she found herself pressed against the glass. Mina told Alice that she shouldn't react so strongly to her words, but the girl pointed somewhere ahead, asking her partner to look in front of her. Mina saw a lot of zombies crowding around the huge trucks. As Linda got out of the car, she didn't understand why so many undead had gathered here. Alice asked Michael what their plan was. The hero responded that the girls should get back into the car and leave. He felt that something was wrong here. Listening to his words, Linda walked up to the truck, preparing to climb inside. Suddenly, a stele, reinforced by aura, flew at them from above. Michael noticed her as she began to approach the unsuspecting Linda. Alice called out to her friend, heading towards her, hoping to save her from the deadly attack. When the girl turned around, the arrow was a few centimeters away from her. She could not do anything because of the horror that gripped her. The hero made it block the arrow at the last moment. The next moment, he told the people of the Legion of Assassins to stop hiding and come out. A few seconds later, several people emerged from their hiding place. Their commander said that he was very lucky he would have a good catch today. Alice activated her sensory ability, scouting out the situation, after which she informed Michael that there were only 18 people in the area. The hero grinned, thinking that with such a small number they decided to pursue him. He said it was very generous of them to come here to help Michael improve his skills. The assassins laughed at his words. The four of them wouldn't be able to defeat an entire guild, especially since their commander was a second level awakened. Michael became excited after learning that there was another awakened one here. He said that it would be fun to play with him. The boy's words made Khan furious. Taking out a dagger, the hero said that he would give them 3 attempts to shoot him, after which he looked at his opponents bloodthirstily and said that otherwise they would face death. Khan couldn't tell if the guy standing in front of him was crazy or just looking for death. Michael replied that neither was the case, but that he was giving him a chance to survive. The man was finally convinced that the boy had gone crazy, so they would give him a chance to escape. No one had ever dared to utter such stupidity. The next moment he drew his bow, preparing to finish off this boy. When the arrow flew towards the hero, he said that it was too slow, after which he easily dodged the shot. Khan is surprised that he was able to dodge his arrow so easily. Mina watched this circus with displeasure. She knew that Michael could deal with their leader in one blow, but for some reason he decided to mess around with them. The girl noted that compared to last time, the guy's speed had increased significantly. He was getting stronger day by day. Meanwhile, Michael announced that the man had only 2 attempts left. The hero needed to get closer to the enemy to get rid of him with one blow, and he did not have time to give the signal to the other members of the Legion. Khan drew his bow again, preparing to fire 4 arrows at once. This time, the boy would not have the opportunity to dodge. But this time, too, Michael dodged all the attacks, sliding from side to side with lightning speed. Approaching the enemy, the hero asked if this was all the man was capable of, which was very disappointing to him. The guy tried to piss off his opponent by asking how someone like him with such mediocre abilities managed to become a commander. Team Khan began to worry that their leader might be defeated by such a strong opponent. After Michael's words, the man finally lost his composure. A moment later, he released dozens of arrows, showing all his power. The hero did not expect that his opponent could do something like this. Clouds of dust covered the area where the boy stood. The members of the Legion thought that he was doomed from the start. It was stupid to oppose their commander. Kan had a hard time with this technique. After using it, he stood there, breathing heavily. He was sure that this time Michael had no chance to dodge. When the column of dust cleared, everyone expected to see a dead body pierced by arrows, but there was no one there. The next moment, a sharp blade was pressed against the Legion commander's neck. The hero, completely unharmed, stood behind Kan and smiled. The man turned around abruptly, causing Michael to jump back. He asked how the guy managed to survive his attack. But the hero kicked him in the stomach, saying that he talked too much, after which he approached the man lying on the ground, saying that all attempts made to him had failed, and now the hero could calmly kill his opponent. Kan asked for mercy. In exchange, he could tell interesting information about the Legion troops. Michael was interested in his offer. Seeing that his opponent liked his offer, the man continued, saying that he could share information about where their main forces were located, as well as explain why so many undead had gathered here. The Legion commander hoped to stall for time by talking. He planned to discreetly give an alarm signal, and then the people remaining in the rear would end up here. In this situation, Kan was sure that the boy would not be able to leave here alive. When he finally got to the device and all he had to do was press the button, Michael said that his opponent's right hand was a little restless. After his remark, Kan's heart skipped a few beats. He didn't understand how the hero managed to notice anything. Taking advantage of the enemy's confusion, the guy threw his dagger at him. A moment later, the man's hand holding the signaling device fell limply to the ground. A shocked Kan looked at his severed hand in horror. He was brought out of his state of shock by a terribly strong pain. He could not hold back his screams. He barely managed to give the order to his men to return immediately and gather the main forces of the Legion. This guy is too fast and cunning. Meanwhile, Michael turned to Mina, asking if she could deal with these midges together with Alice. The girl indignantly asked why she should fulfill his requests. Not only he was testing her, she was also evaluating every action of the hero. Having said this, she turned around and was about to return to the truck. The guy replied that if she did not want to, he would not force her. He just wanted to give her the opportunity to play with his baby. After his words, Mina turned around and, already holding her machine gun at gunpoint, said that she would be able to deal with everyone, even if reinforcements came to the enemy. She was ready to do anything to get the treasure promised to her. Explosions one after another engulfed the members of the Legion, giving them no chance to escape. Alice, who was watching from the side, said that this girl had so much energy that she could cope without her help. Michael approached Kanu, demanding that he tell him all the information about the Legion without prevarication. He had many ways to force the truth out of the man. The Legion commander said that he could tell him, but first the boy had to promise to let him go alive. In response to his words, Michael plunged the dagger into the ground between his opponent's legs, after which the hero gave him a choice. Either Kan would tell everything voluntarily, or the guy would gradually rid him of one limb at a time. The threat worked. The terrified man said that they had this new regiment with about 1,000 people and more than 100 awakened. He blocked the bridge to attract the undead, which they were going to use as a sacrifice. The hero had heard about the strength of this army, which was not inferior to their cruelty. He tried to figure out the reason for their presence in the vicinity of the city and blocking the bridge. His thoughts were interrupted by Kan, who asked if he could now leave, and he fulfilled his condition. Without waiting for an answer, the man ran away from the place. He planned to return here, bringing the main force of the Legion with him to get rid of the guy. Suddenly, a dagger blade pierced his chest. Alice, standing to the side, watched in surprise as the well-aimed weapon reached its target at an impressive distance. Michael said there was no clause in his terms about releasing the man alive. He later approached the dead enemy, taking his dagger. Suddenly, the hero noticed a green glow coming from the man's body. Coming closer, he picked up something that resembled a pearl. It was the one that was emitting this glow. The next second, the balloon burst like a soap bubble. Michael realized that he was trapped. He immediately informed the girls that they needed to leave immediately. They had been discovered. After his words, they all rushed to the truck. Meanwhile, at the Legion camp, Glenn used his ability to check the status of all squad leaders. Suddenly, one of the connecting balls burst. He was surprised that the commander of the patrol squad was defeated. The man knew that Kan was a fairly strong second-level awakened. The person who killed him must have incredible abilities. After that, he headed towards the exit of the tent. They had been sitting in one place for quite a long time. He decided it was time for them to start moving on. Michael and his companions moved in complete silence. Unable to bear it any longer, Mina began to complain about the fact that she was sitting in the back while everyone else was sitting in front. The guy asked her to shut up. They could be caught at any moment. They should be prepared for this. All this time, he was thinking that their forces were not enough to resist the numerous army. Meanwhile, Linda was thinking about how she could become stronger so as not to become a burden to others. Suddenly, Alice reported that enemy vehicles were approaching them. Michael expected to be caught up, but he didn't think it would happen so quickly. Glenn, who was leading the chase, ordered the truck to be caught. He couldn't let those who killed Khan get away. As he approached, he fired his cannon towards the enemy. Alice warned that a rocket was flying towards them. After her words, Mina climbed onto the truck, saying that as long as she was here, none of the missiles would hit them. After she fired directly at the charge flying towards them, the deafening explosion passed over their heads, causing no significant damage to either side. The girl said she has no equal when it comes to guns. In response to her statement, Glenn ordered all missiles to be fired on his command so that the girl could show off all her skills. Mina didn't like this way of testing her abilities. The man raised his hand and gave the permission signal. The girl realized that she couldn't handle so many missiles on her own, so she called Michael for help. The boy responded to her request by joining her on the roof of the truck. He immediately placed an air shield around the bottom. All the missiles crashed into it, causing no damage to Michael and his team. The Legion troops did not understand where the wall of air came from. Glenn ordered no more rockets to be fired. Glenn found the meeting with such a talented guy quite interesting. Getting down from his truck, he told the hero that he had managed to interest him. Jumping down, Michael told Mina to move forward while he held them back, otherwise they would not be able to escape the pursuit. Coming to his senses, he said that his baby was staying in the truck, so their safety fell on Mina's shoulders. The happy girl told him not to worry about it and wished him luck before disappearing into the car. A moment later, the girls left safely. Glenn was furious that the girls they could have had for themselves had slipped away so easily, and he demanded that the hero bring them back immediately. The male subordinates said that they would take care of this and bring the beauties in the near future. Michael couldn't let this happen. He used the air wall again, blocking the Legion squad's path. A moment later, explosions followed, indicating that the trucks had collided with the barrier. The men realized that unless they got rid of Michael, they would not be able to break through this wall. Using this technique for the second time in a row has significantly exhausted the hero. It will be difficult for him to resist such a crowd alone. His condition did not escape Glenn, who asked if the boy had enough strength to stand firm. Michael replied that he had more than enough strength left to deal with someone like them. After that, he drew a line between them. Pointing the dagger at the man, he said that anyone who crossed this line would die immediately. Lighting a cigar, Glenn said that it sounded creepy, then said that his guys could have a little fun with this kid. The man understood that the guy was not so simple. He planned to exhaust him and then find out the necessary information. The squad members who received the order were seriously determined to kill their enemy. As the men approached the drawn line, he pulled out 2 daggers, saying that the extermination was beginning. The next moment, he slid between them with lightning speed, getting rid of each one. Not even 10 seconds had passed when the guy stood there, looking back at the bodies lying behind him. Michael stood in front of Glenn, saying that if there were any left who wanted to die, then he was waiting for them. The man was amazed at how fast the boy moved. The remaining members of the squad decided to shoot at the enemy from afar. Approaching him on their own would have been akin to suicide. Moments later, countless projectiles were flying towards Michael. He stood motionless, asking if they seriously thought they could stop him in this way. The guy dodged all the bombs with ease. One of the shooters told everyone to step back, increasing the distance between them and the enemy. But to their misfortune, Michael was at their side in a matter of seconds. One of the men decided to take advantage of the fact that the hero was dealing with his comrades and shot the guy. This attempt did not go unnoticed by Michael, who repeated that such a weapon was completely useless against him, after which he threw the dagger at the bomb. An explosion followed immediately after. The man who shot was unlucky and was badly hit. Glenn watched calmly as the charred body of his subordinate fell next to him. He was right, this guy has incredible abilities. There is only one way to deal with him. Left alone with Glenn, Michael said it was his turn. The man acknowledged his strength, inviting the boy to join him, promising to turn a blind eye to what happened here. He wanted to stall for time until the seeds planted in his subordinates matured so he could get rid of the guy. Michael refused the offer, carefully watching his opponent's every move. After this, the man used his technique. Plant stems began to emerge from the bodies of the slain Legion members. The hero was shocked by such a sight. He rushed towards the enemy, cutting his way through. Glenn decided not to hesitate and used the capture technique, after which dozens of stems reached out to the guy. He shouldn't have had a chance against this technique. Glenn was confident that Michael would not be able to dodge this technique. The hero said that his opponent greatly underestimated his abilities. The next second, he used a protective wind barrier, pushing the stems aside. Even though Michael's strength was running out, he couldn't afford to die here. Glenn stood in amazement as he watched as the boy's barrier surrounded them. He tried to call his plants inside, but he couldn't do it. Watching the man's futile attempts, Michael said that his barrier not only repels attacks, but also forms a cage that can isolate the man from his plants. The hero said that his opponent's fate was sealed. Glenn couldn't believe what the guy told him and summoned his plants again. But he failed again. His plants could not get inside. The man began to lose his temper, realizing the situation he found himself in. He missed the moment when Michael hit him. The man fell to his knees from the cutting pain, clutching at the wound. The hero repeated that on his territory all the man's efforts were in vain. Glenn replied that the boy couldn't kill him. He explained that if Michael got rid of him, all his girlfriends would go to hell with him. The hero said that the man's bluff would not work on him because the girls were safe. Glenn replied that he had sent his men in pursuit, but he himself wanted to detain the guy. His subordinates would easily catch them. Michael replied with a smile that these girls were much stronger than his opponent thought. Meanwhile, a few kilometers from Michael's battle site, the truck was surrounded by numerous craters. The girls managed to fight off their pursuers. Mina was terribly happy to have such an opportunity to have fun. Dissatisfied, Alice called out to her friend through the window to stop laughing at the top of her lungs. The girls said that there were 2 more enemies hiding behind the rock to the left of them. After Mina dealt with them, the girls would be able to go to Michael. The men hiding nearby heard the girls talking, and one of them told his partner to call their leader and ask for backup. They waited a few seconds for the connection to be established. Mina, who was watching them, couldn't help but smile in anticipation. She decided to reveal herself by saying that they were caught. The shocked men said they were just passing by. Their heart-rending cries could be heard throughout the area. Glenn paused for a moment, listening to the sounds coming from the radio. When screams were heard from there, he told the boy that he could listen to the dying cries of his companions. His words were interrupted by a voice on the radio that all their people were dead, immediately after which the screams started again. Glenn was stunned by what he just heard. Michael, standing in front of him, said with a smile that these screams were like a delight to his ears. The man held the radio up to his face, asking what was going on. The hero knocked it out of the enemy's hands. He held the dagger to Glenn's neck, saying that now nothing would stop him from getting rid of him. The man asked the guy not to kill him. In exchange, he would tell everything about the Legion. He heard that someone from the top had conspired with the city of M and wanted to block the bridge. Michael said that Glenn should only tell him the truth. He assured the guy that this was the truth. Before being sent here, he personally saw a man in black enter their leader's office. It was definitely the manager of the City M, and they said something about salt and driven pigs. After listening to him, the hero asked in what sense the word pigs was used and how it was connected with salt, since there was always an abundance of salt there, and the prices were stable. Suddenly, a cloud of dust appeared in the distance, from which the main character's calls could be heard. Linda looked out of the window and shouted that they were finally back and asked if he was hurt. The hero replied that he was fine. Noticing that his opponent was distracted, Glenn took the opportunity to attack him. Seeing this, Linda warned the guy about the danger. Michael intercepted the blade of the dagger with his hand, asking if all members of the Legion used such low methods. Glenn was surprised that the guy managed to block his attack. After this, the guy cut the enemy's throat with his dagger. The man could not believe that he would die here like this. He wanted to say something but didn't have time and fell dead to the ground. The girls who got out of the truck approached and asked if Michael had any wounds. The hero replied that he was fine, but he had to put in a lot of effort to defeat Glenn. Kicking the man's corpse, Mina asked the boy what he intended to do next. She said that despite his death, other Legion members were still hiding somewhere nearby, and if they started to cross the bridge, they could get trapped. Michael replied that he was not one to give up halfway. He has already dealt with the leaders of the scent groups, and he will easily deal with the others as well. An alarmed Linda asked what he was going to do. The guy called the girls and began to explain his plan. Several hours later, most of the Legion groups returned to the main camp. A man approached one of the trucks and asked where they managed to bring so many girls. The man behind the wheel replied that he had stumbled upon them by accident while driving to get supplies. Afterwards, Steve asked, out of old friendship, to give him one of the girls. Robin replied that without their leader's permission, he would not do anything that could endanger his life. Afterwards, he drove on, leaving a disgruntled Steve alone. He sighed heavily, wondering where their leader had disappeared to. At the same time, Michael was hiding nearby, thinking about how to get inside. He looked at the previously tied-up zombie lying next to him, hoping that his little trick would work. A moment later, the hero peeled off the zombie's mouth. He immediately started growling. The patrolman standing along the perimeter could not help but hear this sound. Robin, who was inside the camp, also heard this and was irritated because he had previously been informed that all the infected had been exterminated. He then told his subordinates to deal with the zombies as quickly as possible because the camp was about to close. The men immediately rushed to carry out the order. A few minutes later, they found a tied-up zombie. One of them suspected that something was wrong here and suggested going back. Suddenly, Michael's blades were pointed at their necks. The hero apologized to them for the fact that they would no longer be able to return to the camp. After these words, he immediately cut their throats. Robin was attracted by the noise coming from nearby and asked what his subordinates were doing all this time. From behind the mountain, they answered him that it was too dark here and Tim had been bitten. They needed his help. Robin decided that his subordinate could no longer be saved and told the guy to deal with the zombie and the bitten partner himself. He himself returned back to the camp. Michael made sure that the people of the Legion had lost all vigilance. Noticing the approaching figures, he threw on the cloak from the dead man's body. After he came out of his hiding place, pretending to be wounded, the hero said that everyone was killed. Steve approached and was unhappy that they had lost a man to eliminate just one zombie. He told a guy passing by to go wash up as quickly as possible because he reeked of blood from a mile away. Michael didn't expect that he would be able to fool these people so easily. A few moments later, the gates to the camp were closed. A disgruntled Robin walked out to the group of couples. He said that not long ago their people were killed by a female killer. If anything else happens today, the leader will rip their heads off. His subordinates assured him that there was no reason to worry because that woman would not be able to get in here. Even if she gets inside, she will fall into a trap. Michael walked slowly, trying to hear as many details as possible. He became interested in the woman they were talking about. He assumed that someone else wanted to destroy the Legion. Meanwhile, one girl watched the camp from a safe distance. She was angry that the Legion members kidnapped her friends. The girls who approached her reported that everything was ready for their plan. Sometime later, another blonde girl was watching the camp. She finally managed to find this place and now nothing can stop her. At some point, she decided that there was no point in waiting any longer and pushed off from the surface she was standing on. She flew down with the intention of killing all the members of the Legion. At the same time, not far from the camp, 3 people made camp. Mina was unhappy that Michael was taking so long to deal with Legion. Alice replied that he said that they would be able to begin the main action after the fire started in the camp. They just had to wait for the signal. Linda, who was unloading the car, supported Alice, saying that Michael was taking a big risk, so in order not to waste time later, they needed to prepare one necessary thing. She was holding a box of explosives in her hands. After her words, Mina stood up from her seat, saying that she would help her. The girl was in anticipation of the upcoming fireworks display. At this time, the hero walked around the camp, exploring everything here. Suddenly, he noticed one guarded tent and decided that this was exactly what he needed. He was sure that the most interesting things would begin in the second half of the night. His thoughts were interrupted by voices coming from the tent behind him. Listening closely, he made out female voices discussing some kind of plan. Meanwhile, the girls who had been captured earlier tried to escape. One of them managed to get a shard of glass with which she could cut the ropes tying her hands. The other girls urged her on because their salvation depended only on Layla. After several agonizingly long seconds, she said the rope was about to break. and the next moment the rope actually broke. Immediately after this, the girl began to free others. At that moment, Michael approached the entrance, pushing aside the fabric. He froze at the entrance for a couple of seconds. Linda noticed someone's presence and turned towards the entrance in horror. The other girls began to crawl towards the wall, screaming, and the Legion members noticed them trying to escape. They shouted for Layla to leave them and run away herself. The stunned hero said that they had all gotten it wrong. The girl squeezed the shard tighter in her hand, ready to fight with it. Noticing Layla's mood, the guy put his palm in front of him, trying to explain to her that he was not going to harm them. But the girl heard nothing and rushed at him, screaming for him to die. He didn't dodge the glass blade because he didn't think the girl would seriously do it. Michael grabbed her hand with the shard. She dropped her weapon in surprise, but the guy said that he was not from the Legion and did not intend to harm them. Layla didn't believe his words and said that he shouldn't take her for a fool, since no one except the Legion members would show up here in the dead of night. She tried to attack him again. The hero had to jump back to dodge. He said that since they didn't take his word for it, he would have to prove it in another way. The next moment, he jumped up from his seat. Approaching her, the guy said that the best way to do this would be to convince the girl with physical force. The other girls silently watched the chaos. At some point, they were dumbfounded by the shock of the picture that unfolded before them. Michael tied up Layla and, spanking her on the hips, said that if he were from the Legion, he would have killed her long ago. The spankings became more and more painful each time. The flushed girl demanded that he let her go. The girls sitting nearby agreed that this man really didn't look like anyone from the Legion and assumed that May had sent him. When the guy stood up, the girls froze in anticipation of his next actions. Michael stood up and asked Layla if she believed him. She replied that she believed. Despite her outward calm, rage raged inside her. She would never forgive this guy for treating her in such a shameless manner. After her words, he bent down, untying the ropes, saying along the way that if she wanted to get out of here, she should listen to him. A man from the Legion came to the noise. Without finishing his sentence, the hero froze in horror, realizing that things were bad for them. Layla shared the boy's horror. He pulled up the hood of his cloak, telling the girls not to do anything rash. Afterwards, he stood up and headed towards Steve, who had arrived, asking what was going on. Layla turned around to look at him, wondering what the boy was up to. The man Michael had seen earlier asked him what he was doing there and, holding his nose, reminded him that the guy had been ordered to wash himself first. The hero said that he was about to take a shower when he heard strange sounds from here, so he decided to go in and check, after which he stretched out the rope and added that he discovered that one of the girls was preparing to escape. Then he pointed at Layla and said that he was going to tie her up again, and that was exactly what he was caught doing. Steve praised the guy. Afterwards, he turned his attention to the girl, saying that when their leader returned, he would deal with her first. Leaning towards the man, Michael said that it was unknown when their leader would return and suggested that they have some fun with her until then, after which they would say that the girl was accidentally killed during an escape attempt. He thought seriously about the hero's words. When Layla heard this, she thought that the guy had deceived her after all. Having weighed all the pros and cons, the man said with a smile that the boy's words made sense. After that, Steve headed towards the tied-up girl. The hero was glad that Steve took the bait. Stopping in front of the girl and smiling smugly, he said that very soon she would personally learn all his skills. She looked behind him with a smile and asked if he wanted to try out his friend's skills on himself. After her words, Steve turned back in confusion. At that very moment, Michael put the blade of a dagger to his neck, asking what, in his opinion, was stronger, the guy's knife or the man's neck. Without waiting for an answer, the hero cut his neck. The girls watched in amazement as the dead body of one of the Legion members fell in front of them. After that, he began to untie Layla's ropes again, telling them to wait here, and as soon as they heard the explosion, they should immediately rush to the exit. Once freed, she asked if his main purpose in getting here was to save them. Handing her the pistol, the hero replied that the Legion had started an unequal game with him, and he was obliged to put them in their place. Afterwards, he turned around and headed towards the exit, saying goodbye that if she got into trouble again, he would not save her. The girl snorted in embarrassment, replying that she did not need his help in the future. Immediately after this, she began to untie the other girls, listening to how heroic the act of the departed guy was. When Layla asked whose side they were on, the dark-haired girl replied that naturally they would be on the side of their savior. She was distracted from their conversations every now and then, thinking about whether the hero would succeed because there were more than 1,000 people in the camp. At the same time, 2 men were patrolling the campgrounds. They both argued about which of them was more tired. When footsteps were heard nearby, the men perked up and began to look in the direction of the stranger, asking who was there. Michael approached and told them the false name of their comrade, whom he had killed earlier. After complaining about the hardships of night watch, he took out a pack of cigarettes, asking if anyone had a lighter. The men also asked him for one when he mentioned that cigarettes helped to drive away drowsiness, and a couple of seconds later his request was fulfilled. The man holding the lighter said that the hero had become more handsome than before. Michael grinned and replied that he had always been a handsome man. When the man realized that there was a stranger among them, he became furious. But he didn't have time to do anything. The guy instantly cut their necks. Looking around, he was pleased with his work. His plan was approaching the most interesting part. There were about a dozen dead bodies surrounding him a few meters away. Sometime later, he approached the gate, where there were 2 guards. The hero had to get rid of them so that others could enter freely. Michael approached them using the same script, asking for a lighter. He found it strange that they did not react to him in any way, and he approached one of them closely. The boy realized they were dead when the bodies fell to the ground and a pool of blood began to appear around them. As he examined the body, he realized that he was not the only one who had gotten inside. Suddenly, a girl appeared behind him. Approaching him, she told him to be silent. Afterwards, she put a knife to his throat, adding that if he started playing tricks, he would die immediately. Without removing the blade, Alicia told him to turn to face her. Michael complied with her demand and, raising his hands in a conciliatory gesture, asked who she was. He noted that the girl was very nimble and careful because he did not even notice her approach. Alicia replied that the guy should tell her his name first. He asked why he should do that. She looked at him for a few seconds. Then she moved behind him, aiming at his neck, saying that his life was in her hands. But the hero managed to protect his body before the blade pierced his neck, and with a smile asked why such thoughts suddenly settled in her head. Noticing the girl's stupor, he jumped away from her to a safe distance. She asked him, confused, what awakened ability he had that allowed him to block her attack. Michael replied that she didn't need this information at all, after which he attacked the girl. Alicia dodged his blade, jumping back. Once at a safe distance, she said that they would definitely see each other next time. Immediately after these words, the girl disappeared in a cloud of smoke. Michael reminded himself that his main objective was to destroy the camp, so there was no point in chasing after her. He adjusted his cloak and turned in the other direction. A few seconds later, there was an explosion behind him, through which the guy heard the voice of Alicia, who left him such a bright parting gift. The hero covered his face with his sleeve to avoid inhaling smoke. In the camp, everyone came to life and raised the alarm. Michael immediately contacted the girls, telling them that he had been exposed and that they needed to go to Plan B, then instructed them to run into an ambush in advance, and he would lure them there. Alice listened to him and agreed with the new plan. After finishing the conversation, she reported the information she had received to the others. Mina laughed happily, glad that it was finally time for her flare gun that Michael had given her. Having collected everything they needed, the girls headed to their truck. The hero, meanwhile, was running at full speed, leading his pursuers into a trap. Sometime later, he contacted Alice again, asking if everything was ready. She confirmed their readiness and said that there was no reason to worry. Mina was already looking forward to using her favorite flare gun. Linda was worried about the hero at that moment, praying that he would not be hurt. A minute later, Michael contacted them again, saying they could begin. As soon as their targets appeared in sight, the girls began active combat operations, getting rid of the enemies. One of the guys turned around to warn them that there were snipers here and they needed to retreat. Smiling, Mina said that there were more than just snipers here. Then she launched a projectile from her baby in their direction. The next second, there was a deafening explosion. Michael, who was watching this, said that if there was no law in this world, then he himself would become one. It is he who will decide what is right and what is wrong. After some time, the hero walked among dead bodies and small craters left by Mina's weapons. He stopped, distracted by a noise next to him. The happy girl lovingly hugged the rocket launcher, saying that the weapon he had given her was the best. On the other side, Linda came up to him and asked if everything was okay with him. He replied that everything was fine with him. Their conversation was interrupted by Alice, who reported that the two had managed to escape. Michael replied that they shouldn't worry about it because someone else would take care of them. His words were drowned out by an explosion ahead, which caught their attention. Alice watched with confusion, trying to figure out who it could be. Seeing the familiar figure of the girl leading the rescued hostages, the hero told his friend that they were not enemies. Coming closer, Layla thanked the guy for his help earlier and introduced herself, extending her hand in a friendly gesture. Michael nodded and turned around, telling Alice that they needed to get out of here. Layla watched the retreating figures for a few seconds. Having recovered from the shock, she called out to them. The guy turned around and asked what she wanted. The girl started from afar, saying that they had just survived such horrors, and added that a crowd of zombies would probably arrive here soon, attracted by the explosions. He asked, looking bored, why he should care about her fears. With an embarrassed face, Layla replied that they were all weak girls and asked if they could stay with Michael. Rubbing his chin, he asked if she meant that he should take them under his protection. The girl replied that it was only for one night and that they would leave immediately at dawn. The hero shook his head from side to side, saying that he did not agree with her proposal. The girl looked at him in surprise. She expected a completely different answer. Her friends rushed to Layla's defense, accusing the guy of all sorts of sins. Smiling, he asked if the girls really wanted the hero to become their bodyguard for free. The girl became embarrassed again and asked what he wanted in return. Michael said he had two options. The first was that they would go their separate ways and take care of themselves. The second was that the girls would join his team and he would become their boss. Layla looked at him again in surprise. She assumed that he would ask her to sleep with him. A girl from the crowd noted that his team currently only had 4 people, which made it even more pathetic, and asked if he would be able to handle everything if they joined him. Michael replied that he and his friends had just destroyed this camp while the girls were being held hostage in this camp, which he thought was a pretty strong argument. The others fell silent, admitting that he was right. Suddenly, one girl appeared and said that combat power is indeed important, but there is another significant detail. May asked if the boy could feed them all. The other girls immediately ran up to her, showing how happy they were to see her. Holding Layla, she said that she was just heading to the camp to save them, but someone had already beaten her to it. Michael asked the new arrival who she was. Layla grabbed May's hand and replied that she was their adopted sister, the one they had always followed before. The hero looked at the group of girls appraisingly. He noticed that the overall strength of their group was quite good, and if he got them to join him, then his work in the future would become much easier. Breaking him out of his thoughts, May repeated her question about how exactly he was going to feed them all. After listening to her, the hero snapped the fingers of the hand on which his spatial ring was. Michael replied that it would not be difficult for him. At the same moment, many boxes of supplies began to appear on the ground. The girls watched what was happening with a range of emotions, from genuine joy to deep shock and disbelief. It was the first time in a long time that they had seen so much variety of food. The girls looked up from the boxes of supplies and stared at Michael. A couple of seconds later, he decided that this was enough and said that they had seen everything and now it was up to them to decide whether to stay or go. May looked at the Snickers bar handed to her in surprise, thinking about everything. The girl who approached her offered to agree to the guy's proposal and join his team. The others immediately supported her, trying in every way to convince May. When she could no longer stand the noise, the girl shouted for everyone to be quiet. Once her request was fulfilled, she pointed to Michael, stipulating that in addition to all these supplies, each of them would have to receive 1,000 rounds of ammunition every day. He replied that he was ready to give them 2,000 rounds of ammunition, but they had to obey him unquestioningly, otherwise he would throw them out. As for supplies, he can guarantee that he will provide them with salt for every meal, but the girls will have to work hard to get the rest. May liked his terms and agreed to join him because not every belle is willing to provide the opportunity to consume salt at every meal. The girls watched with joy as the two leaders shook hands to seal the deal. Someone couldn't help but cry from happiness that they no longer had to worry about food and salt. May said that from now on, their relationship was that of employer and employee, but she warned him not to dare even think about using any of them for any other purposes of his own. Michael grabbed the girl by the neck and threateningly said that the first thing she should remember was to never talk to him in such a tone. He advised her, instead of worrying about him forcing them to do anything, to watch their behavior and not let them slip inside his tent. May angrily replied that no one on her team would ever do such a thing. Despite her words, the girls began to surround him one by one. One of them pressed herself close to him and asked what kind of girls he was interested in, even if he already had a girlfriend. She wouldn't mind becoming another one. May, watching this, tried her best to maintain at least a shred of composure, but rage took over her completely, and she began to shout at the girls, trying to bring them to their senses. Layla, who approached her, said that she should give them a little freedom. Considering the state of things in the changing world, it was unknown how long they would be able to live. May sighed heavily, hoping that she wouldn't regret her decision in the future. The next day, they set up their camp. Linda informed the hero that all supplies had been counted. She then held out her hand with the multicolored crystals she had found among the supplies. Michael took one of them, saying that they were full of strong energy, and some of them could even be directly converted into water. Linda said she had heard that if an ordinary person absorbed some of the energy from it, they could become awakened. Having said this, she asked if she too could become awakened with the help of the crystal. The hero shook his head and replied that the crystals that Linda was holding had unclean energy and could harm her body, and that they should wait a little. The girl lowered her head in disappointment. Michael stroked her head soothingly, telling her not to be upset. Afterwards, he said that he would help her become awakened as soon as he found the right crystal. Smiling, she replied that she believed him. At that moment, May appeared and said that everyone was already gathered and waiting for his orders. A moment later, the others appeared behind her, and in one voice, they said that they were ready to carry out any order. Smiling, he told them to be prepared to hear his first order. Afterwards, he ordered them to eat well and rest. They clearly didn't expect anything like this. But a moment later, the girls were already joyfully shouting praises to their new commander. After a while, everyone was actively busy preparing food. The girls were looking forward to the moment when they could finally eat delicious food. An argument broke out between them about what exactly this porridge was made from. A little later, Linda approached them, saying that everything should be ready by now and they could begin their meal. After her words, they happily grabbed their plates. One of them touched the lid with excitement, slowly removing it. Everyone looked inside at the same time to see what was inside. They were very surprised when they saw real steamed rice in the pot. The girls almost cried with happiness because only the city mayor could have such a diet. They haven't eaten anything like this since the apocalypse started. The girls threw down their plates, grabbing porridge straight from the pan. Linda came up and said that they didn't have to hurry because they would bring more dishes and there would be enough food for everyone. One of them looked up from her pot and asked what dishes they were talking about. Smiling, Linda replied that it would definitely be something tasty. The girls began to guess what it could be. A few minutes later, Mina and Alice appeared, dragging another huge pot of food. As they approached the others, they stopped and finally placed the food on the ground. Alice removed the lid, saying that it was boiled cabbage with spices. The girls were surprised that Michael allowed them to use something expensive as a spice. They stood frozen in indecision, looking inside. Mina asked in confusion what they were waiting for, because if the food got cold, it wouldn't be as tasty. After her words, the girls lined up to get their portion of this dish. This dish reminded Claudia of her mother, who loved to cook cabbage rolls with peppers. She could hardly hold back her tears as she spoke about the tragic death of her mother. The other girls looked at her with sympathy. Linda, who was listening, also had tears in her eyes from understanding how much this unfortunate girl had to endure. She couldn't help but hug Claudia, trying to comfort her. The girl said that from this moment on, they are her new family. At this time, Michael was watching the camp from a mountain a little further away. Holding a cigarette in his hand, he wondered when the apocalypse would finally end. A few hours later, they arrived at the bridge again, overrun with zombies. The hero said that their first goal is to destroy the zombies on this bridge and get through it. After his words, the girls seemed worried. They were worried about so many enemies, and it would be very difficult to fight in such a terrain. Layla, who had come up, said that they would carry out his order. Deep down, she was sure that it would not be difficult to carry out this task together with Michael, who had single-handedly dealt with the entire camp. Contrary to her expectations, he said that this time he and the rest of his old group would not participate in the battle, and they would have to deal with all the zombies on their own. The girl looked at him uncertainly and asked the reason for his decision. Because if he was not there, they would not be able to cope with everyone. Michael didn't let her finish and said that he just wanted to see how strong they were without him. He had already given them what he promised them. Now it was their turn to prove their worth to him. As he passed Layla, he continued, saying that if they couldn't even handle this, then there was no point in him keeping the trash around. The girl asked in confusion how he could say such things about them. Standing nearby, May interrupted her, saying that Michael was absolutely right and she shouldn't throw a fit about it. She reminded her that there is no such thing as a free lunch and everything has a price. Layla looked down sadly, explaining that the guy's words sounded too rude, and because of that she couldn't hold back. May patted her on the shoulder and said that he was the boss who paid her money for what she did, and she shouldn't care how he treated her. Afterwards, she shouted that it was just a bunch of dead people that they could easily deal with. Her motivational speech had an effect, and now everyone was filled with determination to go into battle. The girl then pointed to the approaching crowd, telling everyone to follow her. Linda worriedly asked Alice if everything would be okay with these girls. She replied that they did not have much fighting power and there was a possibility of getting injured or even dying. Michael, standing to the side, took out another cigarette. Inhaling the tobacco smoke, he said that in this world, it is impossible not to suffer and not to die. So it is better to know the taste of suffering now than to suffer later, when the entire squad is completely destroyed. Mina, like the guy, lit a cigarette standing next to him and said that he was completely right. This is a world in which people die in countless numbers every day. Michael stared at the girl in bewilderment, dropping his cigarette somewhere on the ground. Coming to his senses, he snatched the cigarette from her mouth and said that children shouldn't smoke and that she shouldn't copy his bad habits. Mina was angered that he called her a child again. Meanwhile, the girls were actively fighting the monsters, and shots and explosions could be heard everywhere. Layla dealt with her enemies with confidence, keeping May's words in mind. Michael watched the efforts of his charges from above. May ordered her group to prepare grenades and throw them at the zombies on the front lines. They can't afford for the zombies to all gather together. Linda and Alice, who were watching with him, noticed that there were no casualties among them yet, and no one was injured. The hero agreed with their words, saying that they were really doing a good job. At the same time, the giant zombie furiously threw all those attacking him in different directions. Layla watched this in horror. A moment later, he rushed towards them. The girl froze in panic. She realized that if they did not do something, a terrible end awaited them. May was shocked to see a mutant zombie here. At some point, he froze and let out a terrifying roar. Then he took off from the ground with lightning speed, disappearing from the place where he was a second ago. The zombie was intent on attacking its victims. When it hit the ground a few meters from the crouching group of girls, all the parked cars were thrown in different directions by a powerful stream of wind. The girls also failed to stay on their feet and were thrown back several meters. When it finally stopped, May pulled out a gun, saying that they should all shoot together to kill him. The next moment, everyone opened fire on her command. The zombie covered his head with his hands, hiding from the bullets. Michael watched this scene calmly. Linda began to worry about the girls. It was obvious that they would not be able to contain the mutant zombie. Mina, who decided not to miss such a wonderful opportunity, took out her baby and said that she would deal with the mutant with just a couple of shots. But the hero stopped her, causing her great displeasure. He explained that the explosions from her flare gun could cause the bridge to collapse. Alice asked if the guy was going to help them, but he said no. He wanted to see how things would go. Michael reminded her that May was also awakened. He was waiting for her to finally show what she was truly capable of. At the same time, Layla approached May and informed her that the zombies' defenses were too strong and they could not stop it without proper fire support. After listening to her, the girl replied that she would personally deal with this monster. After that, she stepped forward and activated her awakened ability, strengthening her body with the earth. She said that the others could take care of the other zombies for now, after which May rushed at the enemy. The mutant zombie extended his fist forward to strike. The next moment, their fists collided. From the clash of their forces, strong gusts of wind were carried in all directions. When everything died down, the zombie stood in a deep crater, and the girl jumped away from him to a safe distance. She was forced to admit that the monster was too strong. Without giving her a chance to catch his breath, the mutant attacked her again. May had no choice but to gather her last strength into a fist to repel the blow. The moment their fists met, streams of wind again spread out from them, sweeping away everything in their path. But at some point, the zombies got the better of him. May flew back several meters. Her blows only did minor damage to the zombies. When the dust began to settle on the ground, a girl appeared, trembling from fatigue and pain. She coughed up blood for a few seconds. May didn't understand why this mutant had such a strong advantage in strength over ordinary zombies. The enemy took another swing at her. Layla watched this terrible scene with a sinking heart. Linda also began to worry greatly about May. Michael jumped up from his seat to save the girl from certain death. A few moments later, the zombies' impact sent clouds of dust flying again. The entire view to the bridge was obscured. When Layla heard someone suggest that May might be dead, she began screaming at them to shut up, unable to contain her emotions. The other girls tried to stop her as she, armed with a grenade, headed towards the battlefield to save her commander. When a silhouette emerged from the dust, one of the girls pointed in that direction, saying that May had survived. Michael made it in time and was now holding the exhausted girl in his arms. She asked why he was here, since he said he wasn't going to help them. The guy replied that he was worried that the bridge might collapse if they continued fighting like this. The girls breathed a sigh of relief when they noticed their commander in Michael's arms. Linda also calmed down. She was sure that if the hero was there, then there shouldn't be any problems. The mutant roared in rage. A moment later, he attacked his victim again. Michael managed to jump aside from his opponent's powerful fist. He landed on the ground a few meters away from the mutant a few seconds later. The hero let go of May when they were relatively safe. Afterwards, he told the other girls to take care of the victim while he personally dealt with this zombie. May grabbed his arm, stopping him. The girls surrounding the guy began to dissuade him from such an ill-considered idea. The hero stepped forward, saying that he was not going to waste his time here. He was determined to cross this bridge today and nothing would stop him. Michael fearlessly rushed forward, and the zombie in turn swung his fist at his target again. The hero was serious, and activating his abilities, he prepared to attack. The next moment, cutting gusts of wind flew off his blades. The mutant zombie was unable to withstand such a powerful attack and was seriously injured. Unable to do anything, he flew several meters in the air. After that, he fell face down on the ground. Michael returned to the girls, saying that the zombie had been eliminated, and the girls only had to deal with the smaller zombies as quickly as possible. They were shocked that May almost died in a fight with this mutant, but he did not withstand even one blow from Michael. The girl thought that the only thing that distinguished her from this guy was the smaller amount of resources. She realized that she was very wrong. There was simply an insurmountable gap between their fighting skills. When the hero noticed that the girls did not even move after his order, he asked why they were still there when they were ordered to immediately get rid of the remaining enemies. Layla was the first to pull herself together and take further command upon herself, leading the girls behind her. Shooting on the bridge resumed again. Gradually, there were more and more zombie corpses. Michael, who had returned to his role as an observer, told the girls to scatter the corpses among the cars so that nothing would hinder their passage. Lighting another cigarette, he thought about how after they crossed this bridge, they would have to travel several hundred more kilometers to finally reach the research laboratory. May approached him and apologetically said that they had failed to complete the task set for them, and if he wanted to terminate their contract, she would not object. Smiling, he handed the girl a piece of paper with contents unknown to her. Taking the paper in her hand, May asked if this was confirmation of the end of their cooperation. But when she read the 10-year employment contract offered to her, she froze in amazement with tears in her eyes. She asked why he offered them something like that. Michael replied that they had passed his test. A few hours later, the sun began to sink lower and lower over the horizon. Zombies were scurrying around the city. They moved steadily towards their victims. As soon as Michael's team came across them, bullets immediately started flying from their pistols. The truck raced through the streets, destroying zombies one after another. In another part of the city, Zombie bodies were also actively falling to the ground. As soon as this place was secured, they headed to the gathering point. Upon returning, May told Layla to take a couple of people with her and thoroughly inspect the city to make sure there were no more monsters here, after which she should send a few to stand guard over the city. After listening to her commander's order, the girl said that she would do everything and went to gather people. Immediately after this, she told Michael that they had made great progress and were now literally several thousand kilometers from the city of N. She wondered where they were heading and what they would do if they encountered a large group of zombies again. The guy studying the map replied that they would find out everything when the time came. After answering her question, he asked her to gather everyone after dinner. He wanted to say something. May was irritated by his attitude. Linda, noticing the girl's condition, approached her, telling her that she shouldn't worry, because Michael is not the type to achieve his goal at the cost of the lives of his team members. May sighed heavily after her words. She said she was worried that as they traveled longer distances, the risk of encountering various types of danger became higher. The hero returned to the truck. He thought that having passed this city, they would reach the village of tigers, after which they would finally reach the research laboratory. The guy was worried that there were more than 1,000 zombies and several dozen mutant zombies at the pass in front of the village. It was there that he lost a good half of his elite soldiers in the past. Throwing his head back, he decided he needed to find another way. Suddenly there was a noise outside. Sent on reconnaissance, Layla came running back shouting that she had urgent news. A worried May asked what happened. The girl began to tell that they noticed a large group of zombies near the city. Their total number is more than 20,000, which includes mutant zombies. May was shocked by what she heard and said that she would immediately inform Michael about it. But he was already approaching them, telling her that he was already aware of everything that was happening. The hero did not understand why the number of zombies was increasing so sharply, especially since in his past they were much further from this city. May said that it was too dangerous here, and they needed to find another place to stop immediately. The hero replied that they could leave today, but return here tomorrow. He intended to get to the right place, breaking through this whole crowd. The girls looked at him in horror after he said this. May asked if he was joking, because there were thousands of zombies there, with whom they would definitely not be able to cope and would simply die. Michael looked at her warningly, asking which of them was in charge here. She said that she knew that he was the boss here, but that didn't give him the right to send them to certain death. Alice approached the guy and tried to calm him down, saying that May had simply given in to her emotions. Mina supported her, asking her not to be angry with this girl. He stared at May for a few seconds before saying that this was the last time he would show her mercy. But if she dared to contradict him again, the guy promised to strip her naked and, hanging her by the arms, start beating her. Resigned to the fact that they would inevitably encounter zombies, she asked him what his plan was, saying that they were too few for anything like that, and their cars would be destroyed by zombies. He pulled out a rolled-up piece of paper and said he was sure of what he was doing. Then he handed the paper to May, saying that they needed to re-equip the machines according to this drawing. After that, the zombies would not be able to stop them. The girl unfolded the drawing doubtfully. However, when she saw the contents, she was very surprised. The girls couldn't even imagine that it was possible to convert their cars in such a way. They looked at Michael with admiration, asking where he got these plans. The guy replied that it wasn't that important. Now they needed to prepare the materials and start the refurbishment. May said that these blueprints are really good. They can even convert the truck discovered a few days ago and use it as a vanguard. After a pause, she continued, saying that the truck driver would be in great danger. Michael nodded, confirming her train of thought, which was exactly what he wanted to tell them. The hero said he needed a fearless warrior who would clear the road in an upgraded truck. Panic began to rise among the girls. They were fully aware of the danger hanging over them. May stood to the side, weighing the pros and cons. A moment later, she shouted for everyone to be quiet. She stepped forward, saying that those who would undermine the morale of the entire squad would be immediately expelled. The hero, who was watching this, thought that although she sometimes contradicted him, at such moments she was very useful. The girl offered to become a truck driver herself, but the guy replied that she was a combat commander, and if she became a driver, they would suffer losses. May tried to object, but Layla beat her to it, offering her candidacy for the driver's seat. The commander immediately objected, explaining that the girl was not that strong in battle, and if she was surrounded by zombies, she would not even be able to defend herself. Layla argued that her driving skills were the best in the squad. Michael watched their argument. When his patience began to reach a critical minimum, he intervened, trying to calm the girls down. He said that Layla would be the one driving the truck. He would help clear the way by sitting on the roof of the car, and May would be in charge of coordinating the fighting. Afterwards, he took out the crystals, saying that he would give them to the driver as a reward. If she died in battle, he would give an additional 5 crystals to those she would name now. But the girl refused, saying that there was no need for it. If he had not saved her that day, she would have been dead long ago. Michael didn't listen to the end of her revelation and simply handed her the crystals. The other girls were amazed that he decided to give something like that as a reward. Hearing their conversations, the hero said that he would not allow his team members to die in vain, but they must work off everything he gives them as a reward. Those who want to get something for free can immediately leave his squad. He offered them one last chance to leave before they moved on. Overcoming the crowd of zombies, the girls can safely return back to the city from which they left not so long ago, taking with them food and ammunition along with transport. Standing behind him, May said that they could leave without her consent, but in the future they should not turn to her for any help. Afterwards, everyone immediately fell silent, thinking about Michael's words. A few minutes later, they said that they were not going to retreat and would carry out any order. After that, he told them to start refitting the vehicles. They would move out tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the morning. Sometime later, the work was in full swing. May noticed all the shortcomings and said what exactly needed to be corrected. One of the girls said that this time it was May herself who made a mistake, because the installation of this part should be different. But Claudia, standing next to her, objected, saying that she could not be mistaken, because the commander was supervising them strictly according to the description. May tried to look at the drawing again and check if she could have made a mistake, but the noise from their arguments was distracting her greatly, and the girl asked them to shut up. Otherwise, they would do the refurbishment themselves without her participation. After her words, they began to say that they could not do it themselves and did not understand the drawing at all. When one of the girls suggested asking Michael for help, May said that he would not solve all their problems if they were not able to cope with the task on their own. There would be no reason for him to keep someone so useless around. The hero, who came up from behind, told her to stop blaming them, while she was holding the drawing the wrong way. Afterwards, he took the paper from her, saying that he would take care of it himself. The other girls started laughing at her, causing her to blush with embarrassment. While the girls stood aside, Michael was already working hard. After a while, he wiped the sweat from his forehead with relief, saying that everything was ready. The girls exclaimed with joy when they saw the updated truck in front of them. They looked at the guy with admiration, saying that he had no equal in anything. He smiled and said that now they could make a fire and cook dinner. Alice came up and said that she checked the shops in the area and found a lot of different things and suggested that they split up and look for supplies in this city, because there are a lot of buildings in this city. Michael approved her proposal. Then he turned to the entire squad, telling them to split into several groups and go in search of food. The girls were already imagining how much food they would bring and how much praise they would receive from the hero. Sometime later, Michael and his group went into one of the shops. Linda said it was similar to the one where they first met each other. Embarrassed, she began to recall the events of that day. Mina intervened, standing between them, telling them to stop talking about the past. She reminded them that they had not come here to coo at each other, but to look for food. After her words, Linda immediately went off in search of food. Michael watched the girl go, thinking that it would be nice to marry her. She was the only one of all who spent the most time with him. Suddenly, she came back screaming that she had found sausages. She was surrounded by Mina and Alice, who couldn't believe that they had actually managed to find something like this. Afterwards, Mina pointed to the other shelves, saying that they should collect as much as possible. A couple of minutes later, she happily announced that she had found a whole box of instant noodles. Alice boasted that she had found some canned pork and biscuits. Suddenly, May approached them and said with a sly smile that they would never guess what exactly she had found. Opening the box she was holding in her hands, Everyone saw their various spices that were very difficult to obtain in their modern world. The girls looked at all this with eyes full of surprise. A pleased Mina looked towards the hero, asking what he had found. He replied that there was nothing interesting, just a couple of useless things that he was going to throw away. But she didn't believe him and intended to check his find. But the guy grabbed the box and dodged her tenacious hands, telling her not to come near him. But the girl did not give up, and the next moment there was a roar and a column of dust rose into the air. Mina sat on the back of the lying guy. The girls who saw the contents of this box fall out were confused. There was a pile of women's underwear on the floor. Michael said with difficulty that he had warned them that these things were useless, but they had not believed him. Alice, hiding a smile, asked how he managed to find such things. Mina, however, came forward, calling the hero a pervert and accusing him of having impure intentions towards her. He couldn't help but slap her on the back of the head, saying that she was just a child and there could be no talk of any intentions. Linda intervened and saved the girl, reminding her that they needed to continue searching for food. After a while, everyone moved on to search other stores in their area. Linda, who had fallen behind, turned to look at the box left there. Every now and then, her thoughts returned to the lingerie that had interested Michael. The girl decided to take a few things from there, hoping that someday in the future she would have a chance to surprise the guy. She didn't immediately notice someone else's presence. The girls sitting by the box looked at each other in surprise. Feeling awkward, they both said that they were giving in to each other, letting each other choose first. Exchanging glances, they again simultaneously said that they would keep this secret only between them. A few hours later, everyone returned to camp. They were glad that there was plenty of food in this city and that they would be able to eat well today. One of the girls opened the box with surprise and wondered why there was underwear in this box, and such sexy underwear at that. Layla came up to her and, putting her finger to her lips, said that this was their boss's taste. She brought this box here because Michael himself was embarrassed to admit it openly. The girl standing next to her suggested that she put it on and try to seduce him. Their conversation was interrupted by the announcement that dinner was ready, after which everyone ran up to Alice and Linda. When they were told that today there would be noodles with ham, the girls looked into the pot in disbelief that they would be eating meat. Afterwards, Michael came out to them and said that he had found something good. Mina asked with displeasure if there were new sets of underwear inside. The hero looked at her with irritation, telling her to shut up. Afterwards, he took out a bottle of wine, saying that he found it in one of the cellars. They could warm up a little by drinking a little. Doubting his proposal, May said that they still had to fight zombies and drinking alcohol was not the best idea in this situation. Michael said that there weren't that many bottles here. Everyone would get a little bit of everything, and by morning, everyone would have time to sober up. May could only agree with him, but she warned the girls not to get too drunk. For a while, everyone had a good time pouring drinks for each other. Michael sat alone, tormented by not the most rosy thoughts. He understood that tomorrow many might not survive, so he gave them the opportunity to relax today. Suddenly, someone approached him, tearing him away from his thoughts. Layla sat down next to him and pressed herself against his hand, saying that he had done so much for her, and the only way she could repay him was to devote herself to him. The hero looked at the girl and said that she was drunk, but she replied that she was as sober as a judge and just wanted to spend an unforgettable night with him. At that moment, an angry May appeared and asked what they were doing there. Layla pulled away from the guy, saying that they were just chatting, while Michael breathed a sigh of relief, happy to be saved by the girl who had arrived. May was silent for a few seconds, still looming over the couple. Afterwards, she hugged the hero, asking how Layla dared to take him for herself and suggested that they all have fun together. A shocked Michael tried to pull the girl away from him, asking what was going on. Layla replied that her commander gets drunk from just one sip of wine. Suddenly, she went limp in his arms and began to mumble incoherent things in her sleep. The next morning, Michael gathered everyone to explain the next plan of action. He said that Layla would drive ahead in a converted truck, everyone else would follow her, and no one could stop without his order. Then he turned to May, saying that while he would sit on the roof of the truck and help, she would command everyone else. Having measured everyone with a warning glance, he said that if anyone stopped or chickened out, they would receive a direct shot to the head. May nodded, saying that she wouldn't let him down. Addressing everyone again, he said that this was a battle for survival and they must do everything possible to achieve their goal and stay alive. Afterwards, he asked if everyone understood him. In response, the girls shouted in unison that they all understood. The next moment, he turned around and said that in that case, they were moving out. A few kilometers from the city, zombies finally appeared. A crowd of several thousand monsters moved towards their goal. Giant zombies with a heap of muscles were ready to crush everything in their path, getting rid of obstacles. Another giant suddenly let out a piercing roar that spread throughout the area. Michael's squad was moving towards them, raising columns of dust behind them. Ahead, as planned, was a converted truck. All the others followed him immediately. Michael himself was sitting on the truck. At the right moment, he shouted that Layla could begin. Immediately after that, she reached for the lever and pulled it down. The truck began to slow down. The hero smiled bloodthirstily, wondering what was stronger, the zombie's body or his knife. Having spotted their new victim, the zombies were ready to attack. But the hero's blade turned out to be faster, and it instantly cut off the heads of dozens of monsters. The truck moved, leaving behind the dead bodies of the enemy. Those who were not reached by Michael's blade were mercilessly knocked down by the car. Thus, the hero and Layla made their way. A few moments later, the truck stopped, driving into a crowd of zombies. Other cars stopped too. Layla tried her best to destroy as many zombies as possible. Alice, following right behind her, was glad that their plan was progressing without any losses so far. Others shared her thoughts, admiring Michael's strength. But a moment later, May climbed out of her car window, telling everyone except the drivers to start killing zombies. Immediately after her words, everyone began to move into active action. Thanks to the cannons built into the vehicles, they were able to attack from a safe distance. May said that with so many enemies, they don't even need to aim at them. They just need to shoot. The giants began to roar, preparing to attack. Those closest to the truck rushed forward to remove the obstacle. Michael was already prepared for their attack and was waiting for the right moment. An excited Layla shouted that mutant zombies were approaching them. The hero told her to resume moving and move only forward and activated his ability. He then pushed off the roof, leaving deep cracks on the surface. Michael fearlessly charged at his enemies. He moved through the zombies with lightning speed, cutting off their heads. A few moments later, he was already flying straight towards the mutants. May watched this picture with bewilderment. It seemed crazy to her that the guy was trying to fight 3 mutant zombies at once. She hoped until the very end that the guy would come to his senses and stop at the last moment. The next moment, the mutants attacked him. Michael himself was determined and had no intention of backing down. He activated his abilities just as the zombies' claws were about to reach him. Having collected enough energy, the hero used the air blade. The body of the first monster began to be covered with cuts from the technique used by the guy. The mutant zombie, located a little further away, also received significant damage. The last one suffered the same fate as the other two. Michael stood there breathing heavily. This technique had taken a lot of his strength. A second later, the zombies let out a death roar, after which they began to fall apart in front of him. To everyone's surprise, the guy actually managed to defeat 3 mutant zombies on his own. It was the first time the girls had seen such a strong ability in an awakened one. Claudia, who was driving, said following him was the best decision they had ever made. At the same time, Michael continued to clear the road, destroying small zombies. Sweating profusely, he shouted for the others to speed up. After his words, the girl immediately switched the handbrake to another position. Layla was determined to do her best. The truck accelerated and began to crush the obstructing zombies. At this time, the hero made his way into the thick of the crowd, getting rid of the zombies. As he cut down another enemy, he noted that they should have already overcome more than half of this endless crowd. The guy was sure that in just a little while they would finally get out of here. He suddenly turned around and froze in horror. A mutant zombie was flying from the mountain straight towards the truck. His impact on the surface caused the car to flip over and fly several meters away. As the dust settled back on the ground, Michael approached the zombie that had suddenly appeared. Noticing the overturned truck, he stopped. The injured Layla used her last strength to pronounce his name. The hero stood there unable to move. He couldn't believe that this had really happened. Other cars also stopped. The girls were going to help the girl. But Michael shouted that they should not dare to stop and, changing formation, continued moving forward. He ordered Mina to clear the way with the flare gun, while the guy would save Layla on his own. May, with tears in her eyes, told them to obey his orders. If anyone dared to disobey, she would personally shoot them. After this, the cars started moving again. The girls trusted Michael and, holding back tears of bitterness, got rid of the zombies. A few moments later, the last truck rushed past the hero, who was left alone with the mutant. Pulling ahead, Mina opened the hatch of her car, handing over control to her partner. Once outside, she smiled and aimed her flare gun at the enemies. The next moment, she pulled the trigger. Immediately after this, a powerful charge flew out. The resulting explosion destroyed zombies within a radius of several kilometers. The girl was pleased with the result. She regretted that she was not strong enough to use this weapon more often than she would have liked. The girls managed to move on. Alice hoped that Michael would manage to get out alive with Layla. At the same time, the hero rushed at the mutant. The zombie didn't move, looming like a rock over the enraged guy who was rapidly closing the distance between them. The hero gathered his last strength and used the wind sword again. It was difficult for him to control his emotions when his comrade was once again on the brink of life and death. Having finished with the mutant, he ran to the truck to check on the girl's condition. She was still conscious and told the guy to run away from here, leaving her because she could no longer feel her legs. Layla extended her trembling hand towards him. Touching his face, she said that if the world had not ended, then perhaps they could be together. Afterwards, her hand fell powerlessly to the ground. He screamed her name with tears in his eyes, hoping that the girl would regain consciousness. Failing to achieve this, he began to pull her out of the truck. Michael couldn't let her die like this. Half an hour later, the sun gradually sank behind the mountains, giving us the opportunity to enjoy the last rays. The crowd of remaining zombies inevitably approached the lying truck. Michael, with great effort, managed to pull the girl out. After activating his abilities, he moved towards the zombies with Layla in his arms. By morning, the girls finally reached the tiger village. Once inside, Linda got out of the car and began to look around. Others were worried that the hero was still missing. Some have speculated that he may have died while facing a horde of zombies alone. A sudden cry attracted everyone's attention. Linda said with tears in her eyes that Michael could not have died. He and Layla were fine. Afterwards, she headed towards the truck, saying that she would go and look for them on her own. Alice, who was standing next to her, grabbed her hand, stopping her. She said she would die if she went there. Linda pulled her hand away, screaming that she had to find Michael at any cost. The girl said that if something happened to him, she would not be able to live on. Alice froze when she heard her words. After this, the other girls supported Linda, saying that they would also go on a search. They began to hope that the hero might still be alive. May ordered everyone to get into their cars, and they would immediately set off to look for him. She was sure that they would all end if Michael died. Mina, standing on the truck, looked into the distance and suddenly told the girls to stop. She thought she saw someone approaching them. The girl pointed somewhere into the distance, where the outlines of two figures were visible. A few minutes later, everyone saw a battered Michael carrying Layla in his arms. The girls couldn't believe their eyes. May froze with tears in her eyes as she watched the guy approach. The guy slowly lowered the unconscious girl to the ground under the surprised looks of his squad members. Immediately after this, Linda ran up to the hero, hugging him. He pushed her away from him, saying that he was fine. There was something more important right now. May came up and asked about Layla's condition. Michael replied that several pieces of glass had hit her and the girl had lost a lot of blood, and that she urgently needed help. One of the girls raised her hand, saying she could help. Nana came forward and said that she used to be a medical student. May turned to her, asking her to save Layla. After examining the victim, she reported that she was in critical condition. The glass had gotten into her internal organs, and now she most likely had internal bleeding. She would not be able to hold out for long. Michael frowned and asked what the chances were of saving Layla's life. Nana sadly replied that if there were professional surgical equipment, there would be a chance, but in their conditions, it was impossible. The others also drooped after her words. May began to burst into bitter tears, thinking that it would have been better if she had taken the driver's seat. She just had to insist on her own. Lighting a cigarette, Michael told everyone to stop crying. He knew a way to save Layla. Having noticed him, the girls asked how exactly he was going to save her. The guy replied that he would explain this later and ordered that a tent be set up for him immediately. The girls ran to carry out the order without delay. After he landed near Layla, he assumed that the regeneration crystal would help restore damaged organs. If the crystal's energy was not enough, then he would have to use his own to save her. A couple of minutes later, May ran up to him, informing him that the tent was ready. The hero headed there, taking the girl in his arms and warning no one to go inside. The members of his squad looked after him in surprise, trying to understand how exactly he was going to treat Layla without any medical instruments. Suddenly, May sat down on the ground and said that they would stay where they were and wait, trusting Michael. She believed with all her might that Layla would live. Meanwhile, the guy went inside the tent and put the girl on the table. Taking the crystal in his hands, he hoped that its energy would still be enough and he wouldn't have to add his own. He then applied it to his chest area, releasing its energy. A moment later, the girl began to make painful moans. These sounds could be heard from outside as well. The girl standing nearby once again froze in surprise, listening to Layla's moans. When May heard the whispers with various guesses about what was going on inside, she turned to everyone and said that it was just a treatment, not what they imagined. A few minutes later, the crystal turned black, and Layla, through her moans, begged not to stop. Michael's fears came true. The crystal's energy was not enough to heal her completely. He would still have to use his own energy, which the guy really didn't want to do. He sighed heavily and placed his hands, shrouded in radiance, on the girl. He had to help her no matter what. After that, her moans became even louder, echoing throughout the camp. Blushing, Linda didn't think anyone would beat her to Michael's attention. The equally confused girls looked at May with distrust, saying that, judging by the sounds reaching them, they were definitely not doing any treatment inside. The irritated girl replied that they couldn't keep their mouths shut and had to get on with their work. Although the other girls had left, May was tormented by the question of what exactly the hero was doing inside that was making such sounds. Linda, who approached her, said that they shouldn't make up unnecessary things for themselves because Michael was simply treating Layla. Suddenly, a hand came out of the tent, opening the entrance. The next moment, a completely healthy and happy Layla came out from there, along with an exhausted guy who lit another cigarette. Looking at them, May and Linda had no doubt that the two had slept together. Noticing the strange expression on their faces, Michael asked what had happened to them. May, blushing, voiced the assumption that had occurred to her earlier about what they were doing inside in order to verify its veracity. Layla, no less blushing, asked how such a thing could have occurred to her. She explained that the hero was simply healing her with a life crystal, which was not at all what they thought. After her words, Linda breathed a sigh of relief. An irritated Michael asked what they were thinking. Afterwards, he ordered everyone to get into their cars. They needed to leave here immediately. The girls immediately ran to carry out his order. Linda, who remained next to him, wanted to thank the guy for the help he provided. Without turning around, he replied that he saved her because she was his teammate. Then he moved forward, saying that the girl should get into the car if she didn't want to stay here. She sighed, looking sadly after him, upset by his words about her being just his teammate. They moved non-stop for several hours along the mountains. After many hours of grueling travel, Michael and his guys finally reached the village of Two Rivers. The girls got out of the cars, enjoying the fresh air. They were interested in how the hero managed to find such a wonderful and safe place. Michael himself thought that he had finally returned to the place where he was born and raised after so many years. May approached him and asked what they would do in this village. Turning to her, he replied that they were not far from their final destination, so now they should all rest and gain strength, then asked her to take a few people to look for something useful here. The girl asked if they should clear this place first since there might be zombies here. Taking out a cigarette, he replied that he was sure they were not here. The reason the guy was sure of this was the fact that he had personally killed all the inhabitants of this village. Watching the girls walk away, the hero decided to visit the graves of his grandfather and grandmother. May and her partner approached the house from which they decided to begin their search. Once in the yard, she noticed the spoiled vegetables, but she was alarmed by the fact that several years had passed since the end of the world, and all this should have rotted long ago. Looking at the front door of the house, the girl assumed that someone had lived here after the apocalypse. She opened the door wider, stepping carefully into the room. As she approached the table, May noticed that there wasn't much dust here and that someone had lived here not long ago. She took the diary lying there, hoping to find out information about its owner. May opened the entry from September 2020, which described how the diary owner's grandfather had become seriously ill and the boy had gone to the mountain to collect rare herbs. The next entry was a month later, and it said that the boy's grandparents had passed away the previous night. The next page was written in the 32nd year. The girl did not understand how this diary was written several years before. She began to leaf through the diary more actively. Suddenly, May noticed something that caught her attention. At the very bottom of the open page, she read that it was written a year after the end of the world by Michael. The surprised girl didn't even notice someone approaching from behind. She was sure that this diary belonged to their boss. Now she was worried about who exactly he wanted to kill so desperately. The hero's voice, heard behind her, brought the girl back to reality. May turned around in fear, hiding the diary behind her back, and asked what he was doing here. The guy stepped forward and grabbed her hand, lifting it up along with the diary. He asked if she had read the contents. May looked down and replied that she had read only a little. She didn't know that this thing belonged to him. Without holding back his emotions, Michael asked why she read it. He grabbed her by the throat and pushed her against the wall, saying that no one had given her permission to touch anyone's personal things. Gasping for breath, she began to repent of what she had done. When she was almost out of air, her voice became weaker. Michael came to his senses, realizing that he was about to kill her. He loosened his grip, allowing the girl to sink to the floor. The hero took the diary, apologizing for giving in to a burst of emotion. The guy headed towards the exit. The girl shouted apologies after him. Turning around, the guy said that she should keep quiet about what happened. As May struggled to her feet, she thought about how Michael had a rather complicated past. Sometime later, the guy climbed the mountain. He thought about his fallen comrades with whom he fought shoulder to shoulder. The only thing left of them are old graves with wooden plaques. The hero took out a lighter and, having decided something for himself, lit a fire. He decided to get rid of the diary with his painful past. Michael vowed to survive for the sake of his fallen comrades at any cost. Suddenly, someone approached him from behind. Noticing the presence of someone else, he took out his blade, asking who was there. It turned out to be a girl from his squad. Anna said that she saw him climbing the mountain and followed him because she was worried that something might happen to the guy. Lowering his weapon, he replied that everything was fine and the girl could go back. As he turned around, Anna grabbed his hand, saying that all these days they had been very happy thanks to him, and she would like to repay the guy properly for this. Michael pulled his hand away and replied that they would talk about everything when they returned to camp. It was not safe here. She stood in place, looking at the heroes retreating back. The girl did not understand why he did not give in to temptation, because she even used the perfume she had found earlier. Suddenly, a wild boar appeared behind her. The girl fell to the ground in fear and began calling Michael for help. As the animal was about to pounce on her, she closed her eyes in horror. The guy made it at the last moment, saving the girl. A moment later, the boar fell dead to the ground. The hero told the girl not to use this perfume anymore because zombie animals have a heightened sense of smell, and the smell of perfume only provokes them. Then he ordered her to go get someone, and they carried the dead carcass to the camp. That evening, everyone had a feast, preparing a variety of meat dishes. May approached Michael, saying that the boar meat could be exchanged for many valuable goods in the city, and he should not have let them use it for dinner. He replied that they deserved it, because they had been through a lot in the last few days. Then he asked not to disturb him, because he was going to sleep. Anna saw the guy heading towards one of the houses and decided that this was her chance. Finding himself alone, the hero lost track of time while emptying another bottle of alcohol. He was still tormented by thoughts about his dead comrades and relatives. Suddenly, the door to the room opened. The girl, frozen on the threshold, asked if she could come in. The drunk guy asked who it was. Ignoring his question, Anna walked in and said that she couldn't sleep at night, so she came here. Michael called her over, saying they could have a drink together. The girl replied that she doesn't drink. But he pulled her hand, saying that everything was okay. Having seated Anna on his lap, the hero said that he had never drunk before either, and that the girl should just try it to get used to the taste of alcohol. Blushing, she replied that she was too hot to be in his arms. He looked at her for a few seconds. Then he laid the girl on the bed, hovering over her and saying that in that case he could help her undress. Some time later, a sober Michael was nervously smoking a cigarette. He realized that he had made a mistake under the influence of alcohol. The girl woke up and hugged him around the neck, asking if she was now his girlfriend. Michael pulled away and stood up, replying that it was too late and she had better go back. Afterwards, he threw a crystal on the bed, saying that with this Anna would be able to buy many things in the city. She asks him with displeasure what he means by this action. The guy replied that he was very sorry, he was drunk, but he didn't want a relationship, and looking at her, he continued, telling her to accept the crystal as compensation. If it was not enough for her, then he could give more. Anna jumped out of bed and in a fit of rage threw the stone on the floor, breaking it. With tears in her eyes, she said that she did not need any crystals. She had never met anyone before that evening. After her words, the hero turned to her again. He apologized, saying that he couldn't get a girlfriend right now and handed her a few more crystals, saying that he could give them to someone else if he wanted. Anna threw all the stones aside, saying that she didn't need anything from him. Afterwards, she ran out into the street. Michael thought that she shouldn't blame him for what happened, because in the modern world, everyone is ruthless towards each other. The upset girl ran deep into the mountains. Anna shed tears, accusing the guy of treating her in the most disgusting way. She didn't want to see him anymore and decided to leave his squad. Suddenly, she was attracted by someone's screams. Anna stood up from her seat and headed towards the sounds, asking who was there. Claudia ran out to her, asking why the girl wasn't sleeping in the middle of the night. She was surprised to see only her and asked who Claudia had just talked to, because she had definitely seen two silhouettes. But she attributed it to the fact that the girl was too tired and it might have seemed to her. But Anna insisted, saying that she had definitely seen another girl with long blonde hair. Claudia grabbed her friend's shoulders in alarm, telling her that she should just admit that she didn't see anything there. Suddenly, that same blonde girl appeared behind Anna. She said that since the girl noticed her, she had no choice but to get rid of the witness. Anna turned towards her in horror. The next morning, May told Michael that one of the girls was missing. He asked excitedly who was missing. When the boy heard that Anna was missing, he asked if any details were known regarding the missing person. May replied that the reason was unknown, but one of the girls saw her running away with tears in her eyes the night before, and she told her that she was going to return to the city where they had started their journey. The hero said with bewilderment that she alone would not be able to break through the crowd of zombies, not to mention the distance. May found it strange that the guy was so worried about Anna, since they had hardly communicated before. Michael told the girl to stay here with the others, and he would take the car and try to get Anna back. May tried to stop him, saying that Anna had taken one of the cars last night and should be hundreds of kilometers away by now. The irritated guy slammed his fist against the nearest wall. He didn't understand how she could act so thoughtlessly, because this wasn't a romantic fairy tale where the heroes save everyone, but the real end of the world. The girl approached him and, in an attempt to calm him down, said that Anna was quite smart, and besides, they had destroyed most of the zombies on the way here, and her life should not be in danger. He replied that he didn't care whether she was safe or not. The guy wasn't going to force anyone to stay here, and Anna could go wherever she wanted. Afterwards, he told May to gather everyone, and they were heading towards their final destination. After analyzing his reaction, she assumed that there was something between Michael and Anna. Several hours later, they were moving through dense forest. Due to the lack of a road, Michael's squad had to leave their cars and continue on foot. When they came out into the clearing, the hero looked around and, referring to his memories, he found the necessary mountain, having climbed which one can see the research institute. The hero noticed how the fog gradually began to thicken. May approached him, saying that they should stay close to each other, otherwise someone might get lost. Afterwards, he looked around and noticed that the girls were indeed staying in groups too far from each other. He was alarmed by what was happening. Nothing like this had happened last time. Michael shouted for everyone to get as close to each other as possible. If they noticed anything strange, they should report it immediately. Alice approached and reported that she felt a powerful energy ahead, but it did not look like a zombie at all. May suggested going back, but he replied that they could not return after such a long journey. The guy remembered that there were toxic miasmas here, but they did not pose a serious danger. Apart from them, they had nothing to fear here. Having thought everything over, the hero said that May and Alice would go with him. The rest should stay here. As he and the girls walked further, an impenetrable fog surrounded them. Michael asked if Alice still felt that energy. She replied that the energy became fuzzy, disappearing and appearing and being everywhere at once. After listening to her, the hero said that this time their enemy was not an easy one and they needed to be very careful. Then he turned to May, asking if she had found anything. But the girl who had just been standing next to him disappeared. Michael turned to Alice, asking her to locate May, but she too was missing. He was left alone in the middle of a thick fog. Deciding that the enemy was somewhere nearby, the guy took out his weapon, preparing to attack the unknown as soon as he showed himself. He was sure that this fog was caused by the enemy's ability. Meanwhile, May found herself completely alone, not noticing where her companions had disappeared to. She looked around, hoping that Michael and Alice were somewhere nearby. The girl became alert when she heard quiet steps from the other side. May turned around, hoping it was someone from her team, but her expectations were dashed the next moment. A large white deer emerged from the fog. He looked straight into her eyes with his blood-red eyes. The girl froze, afraid to move. Her sixth sense screamed at her about the danger lurking in this unusual animal. Alice tried to use her abilities to find the others, but because of the fog, all her attempts failed. Suddenly, she felt a strange presence behind her. When she turned around, she saw two bright red rubies looking at her from the fog. The girl tried to understand what was happening, but the next moment, a deer came out to her. After analyzing what happened, Michael suggested that the fog might be interfering with his ability to see, hear, and smell. He had to find the one who used this technique, otherwise his companions could be in danger. However, what he saw in front of him the next moment surprised him. A white deer came out to him, engulfed in a scarlet light, the same as his eyes. Michael decided not to act recklessly in attacking the creature. However, a few seconds later, his consciousness was taken under control. The hero threw all his weapons on the ground. He slowly began to approach the deer, attracted by the beautiful light emanating from the animal. The deer itself stood motionless, patiently waiting for the prey to approach it. A moment later, he opened his mouth, intending to bite the boy, but Michael dodged and grabbed him by the horns. It was not difficult for the hero to throw off the animal's control. It was the first time he had seen zombie animals possess such abilities. The animal tried to escape from the guy's grip. Michael noted that although the deer had mutated, he remained physically weak. The next moment, the guy attacked the animal with his blade. Immediately after this, the fog cleared a little. Michael assumed that there must be other mutated deer nearby. He began to move deeper. The boy noticed that although the fog prevented him from feeling, he could feel the sound reflecting off the ground. So the hero decided to use vibration to detect all enemies. His idea worked, and the guy managed to find the enemy's location. He went there immediately. At the same time, Alice, just like Michael earlier, succumbed to mind control and approached the monster. Suddenly, she felt a vibration. The girl came to consciousness, not understanding what was happening here. The deer did not want to let go of his victim and opened his mouth, attacking the girl. Alice recoiled, overcome with horror. Michael, who appeared at the last moment, stabbed the animal to death, saving the girl. Then he turned around and asked if she was okay. Alice replied that she was fine, but May was in danger and they had to help her as soon as possible. He smiled and said that May had the ability of stone skin, and these deer would not be able to do anything to her. Confirming his words, the next moment a girl came out to them, happily saying that they would have venison for dinner that day. Alice and the hero looked in surprise towards the approaching May. She actively talked about how the monster tried to bite her, but because of her ability, it was unable to do so. Then she simply beat the animal to death. Michael praised the girl for being able to cope on her own. Several hours later, when the sun was already beginning to disappear behind the horizon, they finally climbed the mountain from where the city was visible. To the hero's surprise, there was no poisonous air this time, which made his task much easier. One of the tall structures with a crystal on top was surrounded by thousands of zombies. May pointed to the building and asked if it was the place Michael had wanted to go to so badly. He nodded. The hero assumed that there must be some secret stored inside. He would be able to find out who and why sent him into the past for a short moment. The guy ordered the girls to call everyone else here. They must get inside that building at any cost. Sometime later, Michael's squad began to actively destroy zombies. Deafening explosions were heard everywhere. The vehicles moved forward unhindered towards their destination. Mina was glad that she finally got to have some fun with her flare gun. May, who followed her, commanded the other girls. The hero said that they can leave those zombies that are ahead for him. Afterwards, he took out his blades, gathering energy. The next moment, he jumped up from his seat. Michael flew at lightning speed over dozens of corpses, moving towards his opponents. The hero easily made his way through this crowd. Alice shouted happily that Michael had cleared the way for them and they could move on. Sometime later, they managed to get closer to the Institute. They stopped at the main entrance to the building. May shouted that while the hero, Linda, and Alice explored the building, she and the others would deal with the remaining zombies outside. Michael told them to be careful and to hide inside the building if there was danger. Once inside, the hero and his companions discovered a huge crystal. Mina, who joined them, was disappointed to have come all this way for the sake of one crystal. The hero himself froze in front of him, not paying attention to the girl's words. He felt an unusual connection with this crystal. Coming closer, the guy carefully touched him. After this, a strange glow began to emanate from the crystal. Michael disappeared before the eyes of his companions, causing them bewilderment and panic. Opening his eyes, the guy found himself in a place unknown to him. Looking around, he assumed that he was inside a crystal. Suddenly, a child's voice was heard saying that the hero had finally made it here. The next moment, a little girl appeared, saying that she had been waiting for his arrival for a long time. Michael turned towards her, asking who she was. Smiling, the girl replied that he should not be afraid of her. As for her personality, she has many names and incarnations. In earthly myths, she is most often called Gaia, after which she said that it was she who sent him into the past for a short moment. The hero asked with disbelief why him and what her goal was. Gaia replied that she wanted to destroy all the zombies to restore peace and order on Earth. She sent countless people to cope with this task, but among all of them, Michael was the only one who managed to stay alive. Afterwards, she said that he needed to go back in time again before the apocalypse began, and his mission would be to stop the spread of the zombie virus. But this time, he would not be able to go back no matter what the outcome. The guy asked what would happen to his team. The girl replied that she could protect them for a while if he could stop the virus. Then the history of the world would be rewritten and everyone would remain alive. Otherwise, she said that she would gradually lose her power and the whole world would come to an end. Gaia said that everything depended only on him and she was not going to force him. The next moment, a sphere appeared in front of him. He was told that if he touched it, he would be sent to the past and would be able to change everything. If not, he would remain in this reality to live out his days with the zombies. It didn't take the guy long to make a decision. He touched the sphere, saying that he wanted to change everything. The next moment, Michael disappeared, and Gaia wished him luck, hoping that he would succeed, because she used her last powers, giving him the opportunity to save the world. The hero returned to the world before the apocalypse. The supermarket where he first met Linda still had a broken window. The girl herself stood opposite the folding door of the store where she worked. She thought about the guy who saved her from the bandit a few minutes earlier. Linda hoped that she would be able to thank him when he left the warehouse. Literally the next second, the door opened and a guy came out telling her his name. The girl said that he spent quite a long time in the warehouse and was starting to worry. Michael came up and said that he was looking for one very important thing and she didn't need to worry. Afterwards, he took Linda by the hand, saying that it was time for them to leave here. When the surprised girl asked where they were going, he answered with a smile that they were going to save the world.